Yo, it's your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, back at you with a new video. Today is Sunday, January 25th, 2026, with your boy Ryan and the Northwest Sports Fanatics. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button either now or on your way out. Donate to your boy if you can. Cash App, $, ORION, or the YouTube Super Chat right here. We got the NFC Championship game, the Los Angeles Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks. Kickoff is going to be here in just about 5 minutes. So let's cue up the music, take a look at the thumb, and let's get settled in for the NFC Championship game. Happy Sunday, everyone. On the left, likely the MVP during the regular season, quarterback Matthew Stafford, and on the right, one of the best wide receivers in the game, JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Can't wait to be able to see how this one is going to play out. 12-5, Los Angeles Rams, 14-3, Seattle Seahawks. And as everyone knows, Seattle's only 3 losses are a combined 9 points total. So again, when you end up getting into a category like that, it's very, very special, to be able to only lose games by 4, 3, and 2 throughout the whole year. They got the #1 defense in the league. We obviously saw a defensive battle in game #1. Congratulations to the New England Patriots for winning 10-7 in a blizzard in Denver. Denver gave everything that they had with a backup quarterback in Jarrett Stidham. But again, if Bo Nix was playing in that game, maybe a chance that they could have ended up winning that. Obviously, offenses, you wanted to be a little bit better. You don't really expect a whole lot from Stidham, but there was a few moments in that game where you thought Drake May should have been able to do a little bit more, maybe before the snowstorm happened. But with all that being said, congratulations to the New England Patriots. You punch your ticket, and depending on who ends up winning this particular matchup, we're going to get a rematch in the Super Bowl. It's either going to be the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, or it's going to be the Los Angeles Rams and the New England Patriots. And both times, the Rams and the Seahawks faced the Patriots. They both lost. So this time around, with the Rams and Seattle being, it feels like the better teams out of the 3 teams that are left. Not to say that New England can't win the Super Bowl. They definitely can, but it definitely feels that NFC is a little bit stronger, in my opinion. And we will definitely see what we get here after all the festivities for the opening ceremonies here kick off. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. Mike in the building, Daniel in the building, Talon in the building. What's good? And again, this Seattle team, we just didn't really know, after the departure of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, how good is the offensive line going to be when they were bottom 3 prior to Mike coming in and being the new head coach. We didn't really know how good the defense was going to turn into this season. And again, if you can improve your O-line, you can improve your defense, you can go, much deeper on a run. And we definitely have seen the Seattle Seahawks, catch Uncle Mo, all the momentum. And again, if there is one team that can push them to the edge, you're looking at them, and that's Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams. We got Stafford at quarterback, Kyren Williams at running back. And again, if the Rams are going to win this game or keep it close, they're going to have to get Kyren going early and often and have to try to be as effective as they can be with the 12s roaring loud on 3rd down. Puka Nacua sometimes ends up starting off a little slow in games and doesn't really get the ball into the second half. This is going to be a game where you're going to want to get him the ball early and often. Same thing goes with his partner in crime, Davante Adams. And then on the flip side, Sam Darnold. Just be Sam Darnold. You don't have to be someone that you're not. We know how fantastic of a year that you've had. You got Kenneth Walker III to hand the ball off to. Great stiff arm there in this photo. Obviously, you know Zach Charbonnet with the ACL tear, but they still have options as RB2 and RB3 on the roster, like Cam Akers. And what can you say? JSN, in a category of his own. We know how good Davante Adams was throughout the year with the touchdowns. JSN with the yards. And again, JSN, same type of thing as Puka Nacua. You want to make sure you're giving him the ball early and often, even if that means just little bubble screens and having him, catch the ball in space. You can always get that post route and that deep route later in the game, but to be able to get these guys going early and often will be huge. And again, Seahawks, 50 seasons, big memories, going back from 1976 and then the inception with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming in at the same time. And then obviously on the flip side, you got Sean McVay. Both guys are gurus. This is going to be one for the record books. And again, remember, sometimes the AFC or NFC championship game, typically not both, but usually there's one game that ends up being just as good as the Super Bowl, sometimes even better. And that could be this game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. Now, we had a defensive battle, a defensive war, obviously with New England beating Denver 10-7, a couple missed field goals, a couple decisions that were a little questionable. But again, that weather definitely became a factor. And again, if Denver had Bo Nix, chances are they win that game, or at least it ends up going into overtime, and then we find out who's better between Bo Nix or Drake May. But, you would assume, that throw early by Stidham to go deep to set him up for the first touchdown to Cortland Sutton was great, but they didn't really score anything after that, first touchdown in the first quarter. And you have to assume, as great as the New England defense is, Bo would have been able to get them at least another field goal at the very, very least to make it 10-10 and go to OT. But with that being said, I thought that the Broncos defense was electric. They played their hearts out. And a lot of times when you have a backup quarterback, you get smashed and you end up losing by 10, 20, 30. So for them to only lose by 3, I know it stings, for a lot of Bronco fans out there, but they played with a lot of heart and a lot of guts. New England was supposed to be the team that won. They didn't win by very much. And again, going into this particular matchup, to me, the, Rams and the Seahawks are obviously the most well-rounded team. Then New England. Now, we know the Rams' offense is number one, but their defense is a little shaky. So, again, you want to make sure you have balance. Offense, defense, special teams. You get that with New England. You get that with Seattle. With the Rams, defense could be a little bit better, but are they good enough to win this game in Seattle? Yes, they are, but will they? We will find out. And again, I do have Seattle winning this game against the Rams, but if the Rams end up winning, I would not be shocked one bit. Sean McVay is a great coach. You got the MVP in Stafford. You got Kyron Williams. You got Puka. You got Devontae Adams. And you got many, many others with Jared Verse and the defense as well. But again, Seattle, so well-rounded. 3 losses by a combined 9 points. The best defense in the league, and that's going with Houston, Denver, New England, and others. Very impressive. Seattle with a kickoff. And Jason Myers there, 59 yards. And that's going to be Jordan Whittington returning it for 25 yards. First down and 10 at the Rams 31. Mike in the building, what's good? Daniel in the building, what's good? Talon Velasco in the building, what's good? Jordan in the building, what's good? Let's go Reds. Can't wait to be able to get into baseball season and watch some games with you. Hopefully Elia de la Cruz goes off for you. Rebecca in the building, how are you? Let's get it, baby. And we're going to be shooting for 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Hand off to Kyron Williams up the middle, gaining about 4 yards there. And they want to establish the run early and often with both teams. Kyron Williams on one side and Kenneth Walker III on the other. Ernest Jones the fourth with a great tackle there early. Second down and 6 at the Rams 35. Jerry in the building, what's good? And shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. And the game is going to be won, in the trenches. O-line, D-line, defense, coaching, play calling. Not so much quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, even though those positions are important. O-line, D-line, defense, coaching, play calling will get the job done. 3-yard pass there to Puka Nacua, getting someone going early and often. Same thing they need to do with JSN. Even if it ends up being just only 1 to 5 yards, little bubble screen, little out, little in, little slant, just to make sure that they feel they're a part of this game early. 3rd down and 3 at the Rams 38. Shotgun set. Stafford going short right to Puka again. Incomplete. And now it's going to be 4th down and 3 at the Rams 38. And to force a 3 and out to start the game, fantastic. And again, you can't ask for a better start. We saw a 3 and out early between New England and Denver for both teams on the offense. Obviously, there's more firepower on the offenses here in this particular game. And again, defense. Again, we know Seattle's defense is better, but the Rams at times, can get to the quarterback, with Verse, as well as a few others on that line. And on top of that, they do have some sneaky secondary players that if you throw it in the wrong spot, in the wrong area, depending on what coverage they're in, they can come up with some good tipped interceptions, blown coverage, based off what the offense is trying to run. And sometimes, a cheap interception here or there. So Tutu Atwell, Jarquez Hunter, Nick Vannett, Laro Mutchinson, and Bo Limmer are out for the Rams. Ivy, Arroyo, Jones, Knight, and Ostis out for Seattle. So not really any major big names here, and we'll see what Sam Darnold can do on his first possession. Ethan Evans with the punt, 43 yards. And Rashid Shaheed with the fair catch. And hopefully we'll see the special teams be able to do something special here today, whether it be the Rams or the Seattle Seahawks. Odin in the building. What's good? Shotgun set. Hands off to Kenneth Walker III. Bouncing off one defender and not the other. Nice 5-yard gain. Second down and 5 at the Seattle 24. Cam Curl, the Rams safety, coming up with the tackle. Appreciate you, Odin. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, brother. Odin got us at 20. 80 to go to hit the goal. Appreciate you very, very much. Shotgun set. Darnold, short right to JSN. And complete. And if you're noticing, they're mirroring each other, kind of what they're wanting to do with the play calls. Going to Puka, like I mentioned, pregame, early, even if it's a short route. Going to JSN early. You want to make sure that those guys are getting touches early and often to kind of keep them in the flow of the game instead of waiting into the second half for them to make the big play and then feeling kind of out of rhythm in the first half. And again, they have plenty of other guys that can step up besides Puka and JSN. But as we know, as NFL super fans and fanatics, the team goes based on how those players go, as well as Kyron Williams and Kenneth Walker III. Once you establish the run game, that passing game will open up. But when you got guys like Puka and JSN, on any given moment, they can score a touchdown. Darnold going deep. He's got a man. It's Rashid Shaheed, the special teams guru. And just like a magician, David Blaine, first down, Hawks. Big 51-yard pass there from Darnold to Shaheed. And Williams with the coverage. But again, Rashid was that deep threat. Being a Buck fan, I used to watch him on the, the weekly basis on what he would do for the Nyland Saints. And he would be used, as a deep threat, a decoy. And obviously, as we have seen, he's been the best special teams returner in the NFL within the last 2 months. And again, a very special player that can do more than just special teams, kick returns and punt returns. He can actually get you into the end zone and make big first downs, just like we saw. Huge play. Darnold, short right, JSN, missed tackle, and Lake finally pushes him out of bounds. First and goal at the Rams 9. They are going to be getting 3 minimum, but they're cooking to try to get 6. Unbelievable. Let's go. Panthers fan in the building, what's good? Blue Jay in the building, what's good? Panthers fan in the building, what's good? Yeah, you guys have to be proud of the season that you had, and based on how you guys played in that first game in the playoffs, that set the tone on what was going to happen the rest of the playoff run. Stacks, Racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. Appreciate you. $2 holla, and hopefully the Buccaneers and the Panthers will be at the top of the division. And again, we'll see what the Saints and the Falcons will do as we come into the year. Obviously, I got to wait for Todd Bowles to get fired, and maybe we can bring Tomlin in. Hand off to Kenneth Walker III as he bounces it to the outside. 3-yard run. Nate Landman there with the tackle. Second and goal at the Ram 6. Megan with a $5. She said, let's go Hawks. Hope you're enjoying your trip. Stacks. Racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. Appreciate you. And I know that you're running low on sleep. Saw the photo of the DeLorean. Looks like you're having a great time on your trip. And go Hawks. Appreciate you. We're at 27 on the Dono train. 73 to go. Hand off to Kenneth Walker up the middle. 4-yard gain. Puna Ford, the D tackle for the Rams with the tackle. Third down and goal at the Rams 2. Yeah, once we get into a commercial break, I'll be able to pull that up from my Instagram account. And again, even with no Zach Charbonnet, they still have enough depth, behind Kenneth Walker III to get the job done. And, again, we obviously know on the opposite side, you got Kyron Williams and you got Blake Corum. And obviously, you'd like to have that thunder to your lightning. And it's really sad that Charbonnet ended up, tearing that knee up, recently. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to go the distance. They got plenty of depth to get the job done, even though Charbonnet did give you that shot in the arm that the Hawks offense needed from time to time. Bouncing it to the outside, diving into the end zone. Touchdown, Kenneth Walker III. Touchdown, Hawks. Let's go. Representing the Pacific Northwest. Seattle looks like the best team going into the playoffs. Seattle looks like the best team now. And again, if they can get past the Rams, they're going to get payback on the Patriots. And the Rams are thinking the same thing. The last time that these two teams played the Patriots, they both lost in the Super Bowl. And again, either one that ended up winning this game, realistically Seattle, there's a very good chance that they're going to be able to get payback on New England. Different era, different coaches, and we get that. And again, New England is very well balanced, offense, defense, special teams, top 10 in many, many categories, but Seattle is just on another level. Extra point is up by Jason Myers, and it is good, and we have an early 7-0 lead with Seattle. And get everything refreshed here. And a nice job by Kenneth Walker III bringing that electricity early. 7-0 Seattle. Great job by Sam Darnold. Great job by JSN. Great job by Kenneth Walker III. It's just too much Seattle. And again, you don't expect a team that normally has, a bottom three offensive line for years and years and years. And then obviously, Mike had to bring in his guys. You had to let go of some of the fan favorites like DK and Tyler Lockett to make JSN the focal point. But obviously the drafting, of key pieces on the O-line and the defense have made the difference. And again, if you have a good O-line and you have a good defense, it'll take you places. And we always have known that Seattle has a, really good offense most of the time. They may not be the number one offense, but they can pretty much hang when they're flowing, on Uncle Mo. They can hang with anybody. But really the offensive line, the defensive line, the defense, the battle in the trenches, they've been able to smoke out opponents, and gosh, they look good. 7-0 Seattle. And let's see if we can pull up the quick photo of Megan here on her road trip. It's not often that anyone gets to be able to sit in a old school DeLorean, fully modded out. And again, I hope you enjoyed your trip, and hopefully you ended up enjoying, obviously, your time there with the DeLorean as well. Appreciate you. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Panthers fan with another $2 holla. Yeah, I do believe that he is the future. Stacks, racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. Because again, if you have a different coach or a different coordinator every year, sometimes it's hard to get that chemistry and continuity. But, bringing in Rico Dowdle from the Cowboys, getting Ted McMillan, and obviously trying to bolster the defense a little bit more as well as the offensive line. You saw the strides that Bryce has made. Now, there's still a ways to go, for him to be able to be consistent. But again, I do think that the question, is he the guy? Is he not the guy? Same thing with Trevor Lawrence. Sometimes you need to have the right coach, the right coordinators to bring out the best in you, especially if you're a former first pick in the draft. And I think that Trevor with Liam Cohen, the old Bucs OC, got him right. And I do believe Canales and company have gotten Bryce Young on the right path as well. Rebecca with a 10er, appreciate you. Oh, I can't wait for baseball season. I was about to wear my Mariner gear, my Cal Raleigh jersey and my Mariner gear just for this game. Stacks, racks with a little Cactus Jack, bang, bang. But I was a little rushed for time as I was taking care of the Paisley pup as Jason Myers kicks off. And Jordan Whittington, after that 62-yard kick by Myers, goes about 24 yards. And that's going to be first down and 10 at the Rams 27. Words exchanged down on the field. getting a little bit chippy. But again, I wish baseball was on tomorrow. I am itching to do every single Mariner game except for maybe one, and that'll be the game that I actually go to this season. Captain with a tenner, appreciate you. Stacks, Rax with the little Cactus Jack, bang, bang. I see the Hawks. They look very, very good, very impressive. Hand off to Blake Corum. And going off that left guard for about a 3-yard gain, Reed and Manuare there with the tackle. 2nd down and 7 at the Rams 30. Hawks in the building. What's good? Awesome. Memories, nostalgia, when you can put it all together. And again, anyone that's, over 30 or 40, you have a lot of fond memories from when you're 5, to like 12 years old. So a lot of the stuff that happens to you, in that time period, you really hold close to your heart, based on movies, TV, toys, things that you did, or collected back then. Very, very cool. Jordan with the tenner, play action fake. And Stafford's going deep. He's got a man. Puka getting behind the defense. Wow. 44-yard pass. And Matthew Stafford said, hey, Sam Darnold, whatever you can do, I can do better. Big throw deep from Stafford to Puka Nacua. 44 yards. First down. Rams. Move the chains. Jordan with a tenner. Man, I can't wait. I can't wait for spring training. Hopefully some games are televised. And I can't wait for the World Baseball Classic. Stacks, Rax, with a little Cactus Jack, bang, bang. I mean, even though we still got a little ways to go, I'm thinking of, maybe just doing, some Mariners Mondays where we just talk baseball, and again, just depending on what the events are, viewership is going to be a little bit lighter for like NHL games and NBA games. I would rather, do something where we have something in common where we can talk about, baseball related things or just the Mariners. And again, we got quite a few days until we get to the regular season, for MLB. And once that happens, we're going to be doing that every day. But from now until then, we need to be able to come together and, find things to be able to, come together with on the channel. And again, there might be an occasional NHL or NBA game, but, doing a freestyle stream or, maybe just something baseball related might be in the cards. Stafford going deep to Devontae Adams and complete. And that's going to be 3rd down and 10 at the Seattle 26. I think a lot of the acquisitions that you're seeing now that aren't big names, not the Bo Bichettes and, those type of names, the lower name guys, whether it be bullpen or pitchers or guys that you haven't really heard of. It's all about value, at that point, and just trying to be able to, get the most value, for the least amount of money and to see if that could fit, for that particular team. 3rd down and 10, Stafford sidearm throw and complete. Intended receiver was Puka Nacua as he slips on the turf, and that's going to be 4th down and 10 at the Seattle 26. And again, you're going to be able to kick field goals and hang around with Seattle in the beginning of the game. But at some point, you're going to have to get touchdowns because Seattle isn't going into the games, thinking that we're going to get 3 with Myers, even though he has been pretty good. Kick is up. And it is good. Harrison Mevis, who's actually been a pretty good kicker for the Rams this season with the field goal. And again, they're going to take what they can get. And now it's 7-3 Seahawks. Great kick there by Mevis. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Not just because Cal is on the team, but if you look at the American team for USA, when they went against Japan, and you look at the players that were on Team USA, about half of the roster, looked like they belonged. And then the other half was like, well, maybe they could have had players that were better. And that's why, the USA lost to Japan. So I feel if you look at the roster this year, they realize that. They know how good Shohei Ohtani is. They know how good Yoshinobu is. Those 2 guys single-handedly won the last 2 World Series for the Dodgers. And so the Japanese players, are very methodical, and even the guys that are in Japan still, some of those guys could end up coming over at some point and playing in the big leagues in America. But again, if you look at the shape of the roster this year compared to a couple years ago, ago, this team is much, much better. So I think that they realize, instead of bringing in a few top guys and a few middle of the tier guys, that you got to try to bring as many elite guys that are willing to participate and play if it means something to us, right? And again, if we want to be able to get the gold, we have to bring out better players. And again, if you compare the last roster to this one, not just including Cal Raleigh, but some of the others like Judge, should be pretty exciting. And, not to say that it's a lock, that we're going to get the gold. Obviously, the pitchers could be a little bit better. If you look at the positional players, it's pretty top tier. Still a few guys that, you would love to have play that, obviously may be from another country or may not want to play. But the pitchers, that list could be a little bit better. But again, remember, it's countries. And again, if you end up, being, multi-race and whatnot, sometimes they're not going to be on the one, they might be on the other. But definitely looking forward to that as well. 58 in the dono. I appreciate that, Captain. Rob in the building. What's good? Yeah, and again, they're the better team. And if Seattle wins this game, they're going to get a rematch in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Patriots are very well-rounded, offense, defense, special teams, top 10 in many, many categories. But as long as, Sam Darnold doesn't get hurt, Kenneth Walker III, JSN, they don't have any major players on defense get hurt, it kind of feels like it's Seattle's Super Bowl to lose. And they could definitely get payback on New England from the last time that they matched up in a Super Bowl with Pete Carroll. And even though it's different coaches and a different era, people still remember the legacy. And again, Seattle and New England would end up being a pretty damn good Super Bowl, with all things considered, instead of, having Jarrett Stidham, win that game and having a backup. Now, obviously, it would probably be, you would assume, a little bit easier to win, even though Denver's defense is elite going against Stidham. But again, the New England-Seattle rivalry or the New England-Rams rivalry will be heated up. And again, Rams get a field goal on their, drive there. But again, if you're going to be able to match up with Seattle, especially in Seattle, field goals are only going to get you so far. And again, at some point, you're going to have to get the ball into the end zone. Otherwise, Seattle is going to run away with it. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Ethan Evans with a 65-yard kick, touchback to the Seattle 35. And it's first down and 10 at the Seahawks 35-yard line. Yeah, once they end up, going through, the offensive progressions, I mean, they have like 4 or 5 tight ends that they rotate with. But as soon as I'm able to see some kind of stat line, I'll be able to let you know. Hand off to Kenneth Walker III. And again, a 5-yard gain. Johnson and Stewart there with the tackle. But no targets to him at the moment. But again, at some point, you would assume, with 4 or 5 tight ends, that he will be getting the ball at some point. Second down and 5 at the Seattle 40. But no attempts to Higbee just yet, so. But he's not really used in the same way as he was a couple years ago. They definitely have 3, 4, 5 tight ends that they like to kind of bounce around with. So, yeah, but there's no guarantee if they would have went for the field goal in the first half that they would have made it. They both went for field goals right before half and they both missed. So, yeah, they could have maybe made it, but he could have also missed it as well. And Darnold going short left to A.J. Barner, who comes in with a kind of a, direct snap, type of play at some point in the game. You'll more than likely see that. But Barner catching a pass on the outside, 6 yards, first down, Seattle. Ball gets fumbled and then goes out of bounds. Seattle getting very lucky there. Yeah. Again, New England should have scored more than 10 points, but you got to give credit to both defenses. They were both electric, but again, and the weather was insane there in the second half as well. And that limited a lot of the yards and a lot of the first downs and the points. Obviously, if the snow wasn't coming down that much, you probably would have had a 17-13 kind of game, I would assume. Kenneth Walker III running right up the middle over McCreary and Curl, and that's a nice 8-yard gain, second down and 2 at the Rams 46. Yeah, but he was also a stud last year when he was on the Vikings, right? So if you put Sam Darnold in a good situation with a good coach and a good supporting cast, and especially a good O-line and a good defense, then you're going to be able to go pretty far. And it's not often that you get a guy going from one team 14-3 to another team 14-3. So even though the Vikings, didn't make their trip to the Super Bowl, this isn't the same Sam Darnold that was on the Jets seeing ghosts. Again, if you have a good owner, a good GM, a good coach, good coordinators, good supporting cast, and good mentors, you can take your career, from being on a team like the Jets and turn it into what we've seen in the last couple of years with the Vikings and the Seahawks. And he never will be, a popular quarterback. No matter where he goes, he's kind of a journeyman. But a lot of us fans that have been watching him game in and game out, with the improved offensive line, it makes his job that much easier. Facts. First down and 10 for the Hawks as the clock is winding down. Shotgun set, play action to Walker. Little check down to Kenneth Walker III. And now a nice block. There we go. Nice block there up front down the field. Durant with the tackle. 14-yard pass from Darnold to Walker. First down and 10 at the Rams 24. Move the chains. But again, if you don't have a good coach or good, supporting cast, and definitely if you don't got a good O-line or defense, again, I would be seeing ghosts too. Anyone that goes to certain teams that we've seen lately, you're not going to really have a whole lot of success, if you're going to the Raiders or the Jets or the Browns, unless it just so happens, the Browns end up getting someone like Flacco every 4 to 5 years. Defense plays great for that 1 year, like with Myles Garrett, and they make a wild card. But again, a lot of these bad teams continue to be bad for the obvious reasons. Handoff to Kenneth Walker III. Gets no gain. Kobe Turner, another beast on the Ram D-line with the tackle. Second down and 10 at the Rams 24. Yeah, and again, we assumed that, both teams would score a little bit more. It was definitely very sluggish. But remember, Denver has one of the top defenses, and New England had a top 10 defense all year. So both defenses shine. We've obviously seen Denver. We've seen Houston. We obviously saw what New England brought to the table. And then we're going to be obviously able to see what Seattle brings as well. Top offense versus top defense. Top offense Rams, top defense Seattle. And again, to be able to have a bottom 3 offensive line for years and years and years, and now to be kind of in the middle, ranked 14th, 15th, 16th, depending on the week, that's a huge progression lift. Not many, coaches and teams can go being like 30th, in the NFL on the offensive line, or 31st, and then go all the way up to 15th or 16th. It's a very drastic improvement, and that's why we've seen Seattle take this big lift on top of the defense being elite as well. 8-yard pass from Darnold to JSN. Pushed out about by McCreary. And now we got third and manageable, 3rd and 2 at the 16. Darnold, play action, bootleg. Oh my! One-handed grab by JSN. Are you kidding me? Oh, my goodness. Look at JSN bring the electricity. Look at the one-handed grab. Ooh, baby. Nice job by Darnold to JSN. Move the chains. Wow. Handoff on 1st and goal. And George Halani going backwards. Loss of 2. 2nd and goal at the Rams 9. Yeah. And again, as far as like my best friend is a Denver Bronco fan, but again, if you're going to go to the Super Bowl, you want to have your starting quarterback, and, you already knew you were at a huge disadvantage going in that game with Stidham, but, he didn't play horrible. He played better than Drake May in the first half. It's just they couldn't move the football after that long, deep pass, and then that touchdown to Sutton in the first quarter. They just weren't able to really manufacture anything, and it kind of felt like Denver needed to score a touchdown on defense or special teams to win the game, and they didn't get it. But if they were able to get it, they would have won that game, but just, not enough time, and the weather definitely went from bad to worse from the 3rd to the 4th quarter. But I was kind of telling my buddy Justin that, that might be the only way you guys win this game, but I don't think anyone anticipated a 10-7 final. That was a little shocking. Kenneth Walker III up the middle for a 4-yard gain, but we got offensive holding on Anthony Bradford, the guard, and that's going to be a 10-yard penalty. 2nd and goal at the Rams 19. Amazing coaches. doing amazing things. Ravens defense used to be elite. Now they're not. Sean McVay, a guru for the play calling. Shotgun set. Darnold. Short right to Kenneth Walker III on the delayed screen. And McCreary with the tackle. 3rd and goal at the Rams 9. Already in field goal range, but let's see if they can punch this in. Shotgun set, Darnold going to A.J. Barner, the tight end, incomplete. And obviously, the Rams love to blitz on 3rd down. So, if you hang on the ball too long, it could turn into an interception or a fumble or a strip sack. And that's going to be 4th and goal at the Rams 9. Field goal unit will be coming out. Myers with the field goal here momentarily. Yeah, and where was the no call there on A.J. Barner? That was a felony. He was all over him, hugging him, grabbing him, scratching him, clawing him. How does that not end up in a penalty? Someone explain. I mean, Seattle can win without that, but still, if a penalty is there, call it. Is it they don't want the game to be 14-3? Field goal is up by Jason Myers. He's been automatic lately, and it's good. 10-3 Seattle. Field goal kickers could end up being a factor in this game with Mevis and Jason Myers. 10-3 Seattle. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. All right, 21 likes, 29 more to 50. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Very impressive start for Sam Darnold, Kenneth Walker III, and JSN. And now we will find out what the Rams will do on this next possession with Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, and his partner in crime, Devontae Adams. Hawks. What's good? What's good, brother? Good start, 10-3 Hawks. And like I was mentioning before you came into the room, obviously viewership for the NBA or the NHL is going to be very hit or miss. So, if that's the case, we have, obviously a little wiggle room between now and when baseball starts. Obviously, you got the World Baseball Classic, you got spring training, and then you got the regular season. But we're still going to have to do some kind of content, between that, whether that be a NASCAR race or two once we get going into that in February. maybe we'll start doing Mariner Mondays where we just, come together and talk Mariners based on the farm system, some of the rankings, from MLB on where they have the Mariners or some of our projected guys in the farm. We do have the number one farm system in the MLB again. And again, they have rated some things like that. But again, if we can end up doing something where we just kind of do like a freestyle stream where we talk Mariners and talk baseball for a night or two during the week, instead of just doing like a random, NHL or NBA game, I would be more inclined to do that. But it's up to you guys to come through and show love. So that way that can be a success. But again, I may start to dip into that, relatively soon, maybe as early as tomorrow, just to give us baseball fans something to kind of come together with for, and it doesn't have to be for very long, maybe an hour or two at the most. That way we can at least do something other, maybe than the NHL or the NBA as we're waiting for baseball to come around. Hand off to Kyron Williams, bouncing it off that left side. Ernest Jones, the fourth, with the tackle. Second down and 6 at the Rams 39. But I feel like, we have enough Mariner fans that if they're able to check social media and check my YouTube page and we start doing it and we get, some good results, then we might start doing it, on the daily basis. And, whether that be doing throwback photos, our favorite Mariner moments, old school players, old school photos, going through the farm system, the upcoming schedule, who else is available, in free agency, things of that nature. So, obviously there hasn't been a whole lot of big news yet, but it can still give us a chance to kind of vibe and hang out with each other, baseball fan wise, since, we're transitioning into that because we're, getting down to the nitty gritty after an 11-yard run there by Kyron Williams up the middle. Emin Wari there with the tackle. First down and 10 at the 50. And it just sucks that we have to wait so long for baseball to start after football ends. You got this game, and then you have to wait 2 weeks, and you got the Super Bowl. Now, I can still end up doing, the NASCAR Cup Series on Sunday for like a month. I can end up doing the trucks and the Xfinity on Friday and Saturday. But again, then that will leave a few days, Monday through Thursday, where we're going to have to do, an NBA game or NHL. I don't think the Kraken support is there enough yet to do a game. If there was, I would. And then as far as the NBA is concerned, it feels like the only games that we'd be able to get enough support to make it worth it is like when the Thunder play. So if the Thunder end up being on with SGA, regardless on who they're going against, we feel that, we can probably get over 1,000 people or more, when we end up doing like the Thunder. But other than that, it doesn't really feel like there's any other team that has enough fans that would be willing to support and come here. So, I'm just trying to think of other things that we can do. I mean, there's WWE and other things of that nature, but, I definitely would like to, get together, once or twice a week and do something, either Mariner Mondays, or if we end up doing it, a couple times a week. And it doesn't, like I said, have to be long. It can be just like an hour or two where, we just come together and share, our memories of the Mariners or anything that's in the news or anything that we want to discuss or talk about coming into the upcoming season. But I think that would be more enjoyable for me rather than just doing a random NHL or NBA game and we get, not enough support or enough people showing up. So if the support is going to be a little light because the NHL and the NBA really aren't the greatest at the moment, especially the NBA, maybe doing, something freestyle like, the Mariners could, kind of help us, even the gap, so to speak. So, but check social media and we may end up doing something like that, starting tomorrow. First down and 10 at the 50. And that will be the end of the first quarter, 10-3 Seattle. Two times the power, baby. I got to do play-by-play and color. I like symmetry. I like not being like everyone else. And with so many TVs and monitors, in the studio, I want to make sure that no matter if I'm looking left or right, that anyone and everyone will still be able to hear. And that's, there's a number of reasons, but, those are the main three. I like symmetry. I don't like being like everyone else. And mostly it's for the fans, knowing that I got to do play-by-play and color, but I want to make sure that there is no moment that's missed, especially if I'm watching one game over here or another game over here. And, once you end up twisting your head and you start talking, some mics are powerful enough to pick up, from you, quite a few, feet back and whatnot. But, there's a number of reasons. But for more power, baby, you know it. Puka Nacua off that right end for a 4-yard gain. And now a hurry-up shotgun set. Stafford going short right to Davante Adams. He's rumbling. He's bumbling. First down, Rams. Move the chains. Tariq Woolen with the tackle. First down and 10 at the Seattle 23. Nice throw by Stafford and a nice catch there by Davante Adams, having a rebirth in his career. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Man in motion. Hand off to Kyron Williams up the middle. And Nick Emenwari, who's been absolutely fantastic on the line. And it kind of reminds me, when Tampa had its run with Brady, when we ended up drafting Tristan Wirfs on the line and then ended up getting Antoine Winfield Jr. I feel like the Seahawks have done the same thing, drafting a guy up front, on the O-line and then getting Emenwari on the back end. And again, if you can end up getting a strong safety and a great offensive lineman in one draft, sometimes that's all what you need on top of what already that you have. And it's been, big results for Seattle this year. Throw is high to Davante Adams, incomplete. And that's going to be 3rd down and 10 at the Seattle 23. But I love Gray Zabel. I love, getting a feisty guy on the line. And again, it may not be sexy to draft an offensive lineman, but when you don't have a good O-line and then you do, you realize how much of a difference it really does make. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is? Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Big sack lunch there. Matthew Stafford going down. DeMarcus Lawrence. Fumble comes out and recovered by Kevin Dotson. And the Rams are very lucky, even though it looked like there was a little bit of a face mask there by DeMarcus Lawrence as he was getting the sack. No call there. But again, the Rams end up falling on the football there. Kevin Dotson, right place, right time. But a nice feisty defense there by Seattle. Nevis with the field goal kick. It is up, and it is good. 50-yarder. And again, field goals are going to keep you close in the first half with Seattle. But that's not going to be able to win you the game. You're not going to be able to kick, 6 field goals and think that you're going to beat Seattle. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to score at least a bare minimum of 2 touchdowns, and then you need more field goals realistically to beat this team, based on the flow of the game at this time. And at this point with Seattle, they can do whatever they want. They can get touchdowns, they can get field goals, but as long as they're setting the tone and keeping the pace, this is their game to lose. Seattle is the best team in the NFL. They should beat the Rams, and if they go to the Super Bowl and play New England, they should win that game as well. Not to say that New England can't. They're almost the splitting image of Seattle on the AFC. They're just not as good. They're top 10 in many categories, and, we know Drake May obviously has a lot of potential. You got 2 great running backs and Ramondre Stevenson on top of the rookie from the Ohio State University with Travion Henderson. And then you got, Diggs, and you got Booty. You got so many options and so many, good kind of role players that are taken for granted. O-line, and then the defense with Vrabel, obviously McDaniels mentoring May. But again, for New England and their fan base to feel like they could hang with the Seahawks or Rams, you think that they would have to have put up a little bit more than 10 points. Like, I get it. You won the game 10-7, and we know how bad the weather got from the second quarter to the third to the fourth with that snow coming down. But I know I'm not the only one, to think, okay, both defenses are elite, Denver and New England. They're both in the top 10. But wasn't anyone else kind of shocked that the game was that low scoring? Like, I get it. I'm a defensive guy myself. I love defense. I love pick sixes. I love fumbles. I love special teams touchdown. I love offensive linemen and defensive linemen. I like, the grind, up front, the battle in the trenches, but again, as good as New England was, and I get it, the weather was a factor in the third and fourth quarter, but again, there was still enough time in the first half to score more. And it just was a little shocking that the defenses were elite and they were lights out, right? But for that final to be 10-7, a little underwhelming. You have to feel like New England is happy that they're going to the Super Bowl, but I don't know if that's exactly what you want to show to, the fan base across the globe. Like, this team, you beat Denver with a backup quarterback. You only won by 3 on the road, but a win is a win. But if you play like that, there's no way in hell you're beating Seattle. And if you play like that, you're not even beating the Rams, I don't think. And again, the Rams, at times have a shaky defense, but again, they have the ability to score with Stafford, potentially the MVP at quarterback, right? You have Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, who are no slouches. And then you got Devontae Adams and you got Puka Nacua and 3, 4, 5 tight ends. Offensive line pretty good, defense with verse. So, it's going to be very interesting on not only how this plays out, but also the Super Bowl. And hopefully it just ends up being, a lights out game. We don't want it to be underwhelming like the last time that we saw the Rams and the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Low scoring, wasn't really the greatest. Probably one of the worst Super Bowls that we've seen in the last 25 years, just based off vibe and excitement, when you have a low scoring affair like that. And then obviously we already know what happened with Seattle and New England. But this time around, maybe the opposite will happen and Seattle will bring that Lombardi home. Ethan Evans with a 65-yard kick, and that's going to be a touchback on the Seattle 35. Stadium is rocking. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, to see how much the offensive line has improved, but also the defense as well, and not being able to prevent, teams from being able to get into the end zone, even teams that are very high profiled offenses like the Rams. That really shows, what, Mike was able to do coming in. It's not something that happens very often. Darnold, short right to JSN, nice 16-yard gain. First down, Hawks. Move the chains. And again, but the Raven defense went to shit once he left, and he definitely has brought a new vibe to Seattle. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Fumbled snap, fall on it, Sam. And Sam does. I don't know if he saw a ghost there. But Darnold fumbles and ends up recovering. And that's going to be a loss of 9. Second down and 19 at the Seattle 42. And again, if you're the Hawks, you want to have as little self-inflicted wounds as possible. False starts, holding, PI, and even, sloppy play. Luckily, they were able to fall on that, but again, if you want to be able to get to the Super Bowl, you got to try to play as clean as possible. The fans are going wild there. The 12s are on a whole nother level, especially this season. But again, we got to see if this O-line can protect. Second and 19, Rams bringing 4. Uh-oh, it's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Braden Fisk there with the sack lunch and a fumbled snap. And the next snap after that, a big sack lunch, loss of 8 and a loss of 9 on the last 2 plays. And again, when you end up having Jared Verse and others like Young coming off the edge, there's only going to be so much time where you're going to be able to see the other guy that might be able to get you, like Braden Fisk. And nice sack lunch there. 3rd and 27 at the Seattle 37. And then obviously now they're not going to test the waters downfield. They're just going to hand it off to George Halani, which would be much better if that was Zach Charbonnet. Prayers up to him with the torn ACL. I hate injuries late in the year. To see Bo Nix and Charbonnet get hurt and have their seasons end this deep into the year is just cruel, to say the least. 3-yard run there by Halani, and now it's going to be 4th down and 24 at the Seattle 37. And we will see if the Rams will be able to get a touchdown before half or if they have to settle for another field goal. But again, these teams match up very, very well. This could end up being better than the Super Bowl, and again, you're not usually going to get both games, AFC and NFC championship game, better than the Super Bowl. But a lot of times there's one game, with 2 really good teams like the Rams and Hawks. Fumble! And luckily, Man, there's been a lot of fumbles here today, but luckily every team that's fumbled has been able to jump back on it. Xavier Smith, he muffs it, and luckily he ends up recovering it before Young ends up pouncing on it. And again, 3 fumbles already, but every team with a fumble landing on it. So, no extra insult to injury after the play. As we go to the commercial break in a very entertaining game, 10-6 Seattle. And I don't know if it's just me, and again, it probably depends on you guys as well. If you're an NFC fan, you enjoy NFC football. If you're an AFC fan, you enjoy AFC football. But again, if you're looking at it with like no bias, I just feel like, if you watch the NFC and the way that the NFC teams play, not just the top teams, but just in general, the only thing the NFC is lacking is better announcers. No disrespect to, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman or with Burkhardt and Brady, but I kind of wish that the NFC ended up having Romo and Nance, because to me, they're better, and again, obviously they call primarily AFC games, but like the style of football that you watch on the AFC, I don't want to say it's boring, but it's just different. It's not as exciting to me. I know there's exciting teams and I like defense. You got Denver's defense, you got New England's defense, you got Houston's defense, and then offense, you got, Buffalo with Allen. And normally when, the Ravens are healthy, Lamar, Joe Burrow, on the Bengals. So, I mean, when certain guys are healthy, it can end up being a certain type of way. But I don't know. I just feel like the NFC is more well-rounded most of the time, year in and year out, if you're looking like 1 through 7, playoff team-wise. And you obviously know who are going to be contenders and who are going to be pretenders. But I just feel like overall, the last time the AFC to me was like just as exciting as the NFC or even more exciting, that's when like Peyton Manning was playing. Whether it be with the Colts or the Broncos, when Brady was playing, when Roethlisberger was playing. It feels like that era, was more exciting, based on those guys than what we get now. Not to say, I'm not a fan of like, I'm not saying I'm not a fan of like Drake May or Bo Nix or some of these other guys. I am, I love football and I love greatness, but it just kind of feels like, the flow of the game, the excitement of the game, and even though there are good defense and offensive teams in the AFC, it's a different type of vibe when you watch those games on CBS or the other networks compared to watching something, primarily on Fox, with the NFC. Seems like, it's a little bit more gritty. It's a little bit more, evenly matched, so to speak, matchup wise throughout the year. And of course, there's going to be blowouts in every conference, AFC or NFC. But again, everyone's got their, kind of loyalty, so to speak, depending on what you're a fan of. But I watch a lot of AFC games, so, it's not like I'm stuck only watching my team in the NFC only. Handoff there to Blake Corum, bouncing it out to the outside, 7-yard gain. Thomas and Jones with the tackle. 2nd down and 3 at the Rams 21. Judah in the building. What's good? Hand off to Blake Corum, bouncing it off that right side and gets just enough. Nick Amenwari all over the Rams offensive line and the defense there. I see you. 1st down and 10 at the Rams 24. Congratulations on New England winning. I know it probably wasn't exactly what you anticipated, scoring-wise. Should have probably won that game by more, but obviously the weather was a factor in the second half, from the 3rd to the 4th quarter. But, it may have not been pretty, with a 10-7 victory, but you won and you ended up, making it to the Super Bowl. And then the next test will be, can you beat the Rams or Seattle? And we will find out. Handoff to Blake Corum up the middle. 5-yard gain. Devin Witherspoon, the corner, up there for the tackle for Seattle. 2nd down and 5 at the Rams 29. Defense wins games. Defense wins championships. It's just like when the Buccaneers went against the Raiders and Rich Gannon, in the early 2000s. You can have an amazing offense, but again, when the defense is number one, and they end up being that top dog, more times than not, the defense is going to win the matchup over the top offense. It's very rare, where the offense ends up beating the top defense or even being able to be productive unless you have like a Peyton Manning or like a Tom Brady. Shotgun set, Stafford short left to Colby Parkinson, 6-yard gain. Jones with the tackle. First down and 10 at the Rams 35. Move the chains. Stafford going deep to Puka. He's open and caught. First down, Ramley. Move the chains. Good protection up front for Stafford and a laser in between 4 defenders of the Seattle Seahawks. Puka Nacua coming up with that big catch. And again, Stafford may be old and had some back issues coming into the year. But again, more than likely the MVP, obviously a little bit more deserving than Drake May based off the stats. If you end up getting 1,000 or 2,000 more yards and quite a few more touchdowns, you're not going to be able to give an MVP, that only has 2,000 to 3,000 yards and, in that 20 to 30 touchdown range. Normally it's going to be someone that's in that 3,500 to 5,000 yard range in that 35 to 50 touchdown category typically. Handoff and bouncing it to the outside. Blake Corum, no gain. Nwosu with the coverage and the tackle for Seattle. Daytona 500, can't wait for that. February 15th, we got the Clash. That will be on February 1st, and I'll end up doing that as well. So we'll be doing a little bit of NASCAR to, be able to, kind of have a few of those filler streams as we're waiting for baseball to go. But that's what we'll be doing probably on the weekends in February. Besides the Super Bowl, of course. Hand off to Blake Corum up the middle and gaining a nice 19-yard run. Great blocking up front by the O-line there. And again, looked like there was a couple Hawks being held, but there's no penalty. Nick Emenwari, it seems like he's in on every tackle, regardless if he's on the left side or the right. First down and 10 at the Seattle 25, and the Rams are getting closer to the red zone. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Handoff up the middle to Kyron Williams. Nice tackle by Leonard Williams. And again, if you look at the Seattle defense on paper at the beginning of the year, it was exciting to see some of these names. And then obviously as the year went on, to be able to see certain guys develop and get better and better. And it's a nice mix of rookies, young players, and some old school vets and OGs. And they really have come together there for Mike on that side of the ball. And then obviously, as we know with the offense, again, Sam Darnold and JSN and Kenneth Walker III, they're on another level right now as well. Shotgun set, Stafford short left to Puka Nacua. Nice 7-yard pass, just short of the marker there. Love with the tackle, trying to push him out of bounds. And that's going to be 3rd down and 1 at the Seattle 16. And, depending on how close McVay gets, don't be surprised if he ends up going for it on 4th and 1, 4th and inches, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3. I think probably the most that they would go for, would probably be 4th down and 3, 4th down and 4. If it goes 5 yards or more, they probably won't go. But there's going to be times where Seattle's defense ends up stopping them, and they're just going to continue to go. Field goals, are fine for now, but eventually you're going to have to take a risk. Nice 5-yard run there by Kyron Williams on 3rd down and 1. First down, Rams. And as the clock is winding down here in the second quarter, the Rams are hoping that they can get a 13-10 lead and only leave Seattle with maybe about a minute to go. But we will see if they can hold them to a field goal here to make it 10-9, or if they can end up getting a turnover. JT in the building. What's good? The Rams are disciplined. They'll run the football and let that passing game open up. But again, they definitely have a lot of talent, just like Seattle does. Number 1 offense, Rams. Number 1 defense, Seattle. And the Rams are going to call timeout. And that's probably a good call based on the look that Seattle showed. Yeah, the snow, you both had missed field goals in that game, but again, not only the snow saved the Patriots, but also Bo Nix getting hurt. Let's be honest and let's be real. If Bo Nix played in that game, maybe they win. Or at least at the very least, the game would have been 10-10 at the end. And then maybe, whoever would have won the game in overtime, it's definitely possible that Bo Nix would have been able to get, more than one touchdown and possibly a touchdown and a field goal or even 2 touchdowns. But again, we will probably see that matchup again in the future, where we see Drake May and Bo Nix go at it, to make it to the Super Bowl. I don't think this is the last time that we're going to see New England and Denver in this position. And prayers up to Bo. Hopefully he gets better. You expected a little bit more out of Drake May, especially when Stidham was out playing him in the first half. But, at the end of the day, a win is a win. And when you have top 10, in many, many categories, offense, defense, special teams, and you're very well-rounded like the Seahawks and the Patriots, sometimes an ugly win in ugly weather is good enough to be able to get where you want to go, and that's the Super Bowl. Hand off the middle, their short game. Blake Corum with a 1-yard run. Calling a timeout and running a play to Corum for a yard isn't really exactly what I was expecting, but 2nd down and 9 at the Seattle 10. But obviously New England making it over a backup quarterback for Denver, that's going to be, better ratings, than seeing Stidham play. So, and New England actually has a chance to be a champion. They have a good enough team to be Super Bowl champions. Again, the Rams and the Seahawks, at this point, maybe more. I would say Seattle, obviously, right now is the number 1 team, then probably New England, and then the Rams 3. If I was going to do a pecking order, if you're looking at balance, offense, defense, special teams, because I like New England's defense a hell of a lot more than the Rams' defense. Like, I love the Rams' offense, and I think their special teams is pretty good, and I love their coach in McVay. But again, the defense, sometimes they're pretty good, but then other times the secondary gets burnt. Now, obviously, Jared Verse and the D-line is great, but again, if you're going to exploit the Rams, it's usually going to be at linebacker, and it's going to be in the secondary. And again, that's where the Rams typically get in trouble, is when they go against a good passing team or a really elite wide receiver or tight end. And sometimes, even double coverage doesn't work, but on the flip side, though, sometimes the Rams secondary and the linebackers end up, coming up with big plays where you don't expect them to make the play, and then they end up coming up with a crazy, nonchalant interception or a tip pick or, a strip sack, something that they can do, but you don't expect them to do. So, but I think based off pecking order, I think that's kind of where I would go right now. Yeah, go Ducks. Christian Gonzalez has always been one of the top corners, coming out of the draft the last couple years. Injuries have hit him a little bit, just like every Oregon player, it feels like, coming into the NFL. But congratulations to Judah and Brent. You guys are going to be in the Super Bowl. But again, we will find out if you guys will be able to win it all or if you're going to have your heart broken. Because definitely Seattle is good enough to match up and beat New England. But if it ends up being the Rams, obviously New England would have an advantage, I think. But again, we'll see if the Rams can even win this game against Seattle. It's going to take a lot. 2-minute warning, 2nd down and 9 at the Seattle 10. Two-minute warning, 10-6, Seattle. Three timeouts for Seattle, 2 for the Rams. Competitive matchup, could come down to whoever has the ball last, could end up being a game-winning field goal. And that's what makes this rivalry so good. The Seahawk-Niner rivalry is good, just based on the hate that they've had for each other for years and years and years. But it feels like, the Rams are willing to step up and to be a part of that rivalry also now, and it's exciting. He's wide open, little check down. Kyron Williams Touchdown, Rams, blown coverage by Seattle. And that is not something that you usually see out of the Seattle defense with blown coverage. I mean, if you're going to get blown coverage for Seattle, usually it might be for a first down or you give up a big pass, in the middle of the field, but typically not blown coverage when you're on the red zone. Both guys go right. He leaks out to the left. They're playing man, and there's just no spy or man on the running back, Kyren Williams, and he walks into the end zone, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Mevis with the extra point is up and good. 13-10 Rams. And now this gives, Sam Darnold and the Hawks a chance at the 2-minute drill. And hopefully they'll be able to get a field goal with Myers, or best case scenario, they're able to get into the end zone and have a 17-13 lead here before half. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Shout out to Odin's son, Panthers fan, Megan, Panthers fan, Rebecca, Captain, and Jordan. Appreciate you guys. We're at 59, 41 to go on the dono train. All right, Captain says we're at 30, 20 more to get to 50, 70 to get to 100. Obviously we don't have the snow out here in the Pacific Northwest, but I know my Paisley pup would love the snow. Now, obviously some of you individuals, depending on if you're in the middle of the country or on the Northeast, obviously some areas are hit and blanketed with more ice and snow than others, so stay safe out there. But obviously, if you have pets, it could be definitely a winter wonderland for them. No doubt about that. 13-10 Rams lead with 155 left in the second quarter. NFC Championship game, 12-5 Rams, 14-3 Hawks. And we saw a great drive there with Stafford to Kyren Williams. And now we'll have to wait to see if Sam Darnold and Kenneth Walker III can match. But it shows you, whether you're a Hawk fan and you have the hate, for the Rams and the Niners. But one thing that you can't hate, is the coaching. Obviously you're going to have, certain coaches and, players that you root for because that's your team. And it's, very hard to be able to root for coaches that are within your division, but if you look on the intelligence, of Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, in that division, and now you have Mike there as well. Obviously the only little brother in that group would be the Cardinals, and who knows if they'll ever get a coach, good enough to match the other three, but based off play calling, and the intelligence of the game, one of the best divisions in football, and it could end up being one of the best divisions in football for quite a while. Ethan Evans with a 65-yard kick, and that turns into a touchback for Sam Darnold. First down and 10 at the Seattle 35, and they got a minute 55 to go 65 yards. And let's see if they can get it. Or if they end up being a little, a little careful with some of the play calls here. Maybe a little passive. Hand off to Walker, gains 2 before bouncing out of bounds. Kobe Turner, the defensive end stud for the Rams, with the coverage. Second down and 8 at the Seattle 37. Shotgun set. Darnold going short middle to Cooper Kupp. And again, you want to get Cooper Kupp an opportunity to shine as well against his former team. Kobe Durant with the coverage. 3rd down and 8 at the Seattle 37. Great coverage by Durant. There was no chance Cooper Kupp was going to get that. And again, sometimes, you have to adjust and make those moves. Have Cooper Kupp, lead the Rams, but then you bring in Davante Adams. The Seahawks had to let DK and Lockett go, and then JSN emerged as the top guy. But Horton was great before he got hurt. And just imagine if Horton was available. That's a huge X factor that's not available for Seattle on top of Charbonnet. But they're still good enough to win it all. And Darnold going short right to Halani, incomplete. And that's going to be 4th down and 8 at the Seattle 37. And that's the problem when you end up bringing in another guy that doesn't have the reps. Charbonnet would have been able to catch that. For Halani, not so much. So again, that definitely is going to hurt them. If there's one weakness for Seattle, which we haven't really seen at all throughout the whole year, might be the backup running back, RB2. Obviously they need a little bit, better options, rather than Halani at this moment. And they have a few others, that they could go to. One obviously is inactive. And then they have another individual that might be able to get some looks in the second half. But, you got to come up with some of those looks. But Velus Jones Jr. is inactive. And based on what I've seen out of Halani, maybe they made the wrong choice. Maybe they should have made Halani inactive. But that's going to be 4th down and 8 at the Seattle 37. And we got a flag holding. And let's see who the call is on specifically. Holding on Seattle. 10 yards onto the dead ball spot. And then we have timeout. Yeah, it looked like it was going to be a blocked punt if he wasn't holding on there. So that was probably a good thing that he did that. Otherwise, it was going to come back anyways, with the penalty, regardless if it was there or a little bit later. But Michael Dixon with the 45-yard punt, fair caught by Xavier Smith, but you got the holding call there by Stoll. And now it's going to be 1st down and 10 at the Rams 28. So unfortunately, Seattle not being able to get points before the half, and now they have to hope the Seattle defense can step up in this last 133 to prevent the Rams from getting another field goal or a touchdown. You don't want to be down 20-10 against the Rams or even 16-10 at this point, in this juncture of the game. Shows you how evenly matched these two teams are. Seattle might have the best defense, but the Rams have the best offense. And again, field goal kicking is going to be a factor. Mevis has been great. Myers has been great. Both of these coaches are phenomenal. And again, it's really going to come down to the discipline and the play calling late in the game. We will see what Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, and Davante Adams have in store for us here with the last minute 33 before halftime. And again, I'm not surprised the Rams are up. I'm not surprised the game is close. You already knew without the snow in the previous game with Denver and New England, regardless if the game was in Denver or New England, it was going to be a blizzard. And score probably would have been pretty similar in either stadium. Maybe New England scores a little bit more if they're at home, feeding off the crowd and whatnot. But again, the weather is obviously good in the Pacific Northwest, besides being a little cold, not as cold as obviously as the winter snowstorm that's captured a good chunk of America, but again, it's been brisk, but not the same type of ice, snow, and hail and sleet that a majority of the country is going with right now. 1:33 left here before halftime, 13-10 Rams. And again, if you were thinking of a good time for Seattle to be able to get a pick six or a fumble for a touchdown or a strip sack or a fumble recovery or just an interception, it would be right here, But again, we will see if the Rams are going to push the issue and throw the ball deep downfield, or if they're just going to hand the ball off to their running backs and let the clock bleed out. They might play this pretty conservative here in the last minute 33. Like, I could see them running the ball, 75% of the plays the rest of this half, and then maybe making one option, a throw deep, depending on where they get with the running game. And off to Kyron Williams up the middle. And Byron Murphy II, the Texas Longhorn stud, Seahawks D tackle with the coverage. No huddle, shotgun set. Stafford going short right to Puka Nacua, incomplete. Emanwari there with the coverage. 3rd down and 5 at the Rams 33. Yeah, and it's all about balance. Offense, defense, special teams, and then on top of that, the battle in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, and then, it's going to come down to the defense as well. We know both of these teams can score. And again, the Rams have the number 1 offense, Seahawks number 1 D, and that says a lot for the Seahawks to have that ranking when we've already seen how good New England's defense has been, Denver's defense, Houston's defense. So again, at this point of the year, you just got to be able to, be as strategic as possible. 3rd down and 5. Shotgun set. Stafford seeing the blitz, floating it up, tipped, and complete. And it looks like they blow the play dead. And the Rams get a cheap timeout there before the snap. It's a fun matchup, with the Rams and the Seahawks, because you're going to get more out of the Rams than you are of the Niners. Obviously, when you got the potential MVP of the league, he's not going to be able to throw for 3, 4, 5 touchdown passes every game. But in most games, he's good for 1 or 2. Sometimes, when he gets hot, 3, 4, 5, if the defense is kind of piss poor, but, not against Seattle, obviously. And obviously, both teams have the ability to get touchdowns on the ground. So to be able to have that balance is huge for both of these teams. Minute 9 left. Stafford looking towards the sideline, and great coverage there by Emanwari, who literally has been on almost every play in the first half. When you get a safety that can be everywhere, that's like, Troy Polamalu. That's like Ed Reed. That's like John Lynch. And again, you don't really see a safety, going from sideline to sideline, making play after play after play, whether it be against a running back, against a quarterback, or a wide receiver. Amazing talent. Emanwari, I see you. And Ethan Evans punts. And Rashid Shaheed is there, and he hasn't been able to be an impact on the special teams yet, besides that nice catch that he had early in the game. Falls forward and doesn't fumble, thank God. And it's going to be 1st down and 10 at the Seattle 26. Both teams not being able to capitalize in the 2 minutes left before half. And now Seattle is lucky to have one more shot in the 2-minute drill with 54 seconds left. And I thought that the Rams would be a little bit more maybe passive aggressive and just run the ball to try to bleed the clock out, and then, maybe not pass as much. But again, a nice blend of, running and throwing, but it ended up backfiring for them because they couldn't get those key throws to Puka. And obviously that's great for Seattle. It gives them an opportunity with 54 seconds left to tie it up with Jason Myers with a, 40 to 50 yard field goal. Or if they're able to get a, deep play, possibly, something to JSN or one of their other options like Cooper Kupp. Great first half. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bang. 13-10 Rams. Seahawks have the ball after the commercial break. 1st down and 10 at the Seattle 26. Let them know, Judah. Every like matters. Every like, every sub, every view, everything all adds up. .54 seconds left here before halftime. 13-10 Rams. Pro Bowlers, Puka, Stafford, Verse, and Young. Love Verse and Young. Those guys are fucking studs. Darnold, Lawrence, Shaheed, JSN, Leonard Williams, Devin Witherspoon for the Hawks. Love all those players as well. NFC West showing how good the division is this year. You know, and even with all the injuries the Niners had, you know, they had a great year with all things considered. You know, I wish Tampa, you know, with all our injuries, we were able to do what San Francisco did, but, you know, we got to wait for Todd Bowles to get fired, and hopefully we'll bring in Mike Tomlin. Shotgun set, Darnold, short right to JSN. Nice catch. Great hands by JSN there. Great body control. Williams with the coverage. First down, Hawks. Move the chains. And another beautiful throw by Sam Darnold, and another beautiful catch with inches to spare by JSN. I mean, if we're talking about hands, team, JSN is on the first team, hands team in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. Shotgun set, Darnold going short left to Cooper Kupp, which they do need to get going. Incomplete. And it seems like every time they've gone to Cooper Kupp, it's almost turned into an interception. So you don't want to force it. You obviously want him to get going against his former team, you know, but again, you don't want to force the issue. Let the game come to him instead of trying to thread the needle, because he tried to thread the needle just to try to make him happy against his former team. You know, that could turn into an interception or something worse, like a pick six. Shotgun set, Darnold. Oh, JSN is open. He got it. Wow. First down, Hawks. 43-yarder, Darnold to JSN. Look at that. Takes a big fucking hit. Doesn't matter. Move the chains. And that's what happens when you have one of the best wide receivers in the game. Yeah, you got Puka and you got Devontae Adams on one side, but JSN has taken a huge leap into 2025, 2026. Look at that electricity by JSN. Taking the contact and still hanging on to that ball. A lot of wide receivers, a lot of them would have dropped that ball, taking a hit like that. Cam Curl almost with a targeting, you know, obviously launching his body. It wasn't helmet to helmet. You know, it was a clean hit, but it was a nasty hit. And again, most receivers, they get pop like that, and that spot on the body, that ball comes out 9 times out of 10. Great job there by JSN. That was fucking huge. And that not only puts you, you know, into field goal territory, now you actually have a chance to go up 17-13 at half. And remember, that could end up being the difference on who wins this game and who doesn't. Just like when Tampa scored on Green Bay, you know, when Tom Brady went deep to Scotty Miller right before halftime, you never know when those opportunities are going to be available to you. Little check down. There's Halani, and finally Halani making a good play from the RB2 position. 13-yard pass, timeout, Seattle. Here we go. Great 2-minute drill by the Hawks. And awesome by Halani, you know, doing something positive. You know, again, they're at a disadvantage at that position, not having Charbonnet. You know, but again, you know, no one expects a lot of their studs, you know, to get hurt this late in the year. But, you know, we saw what happened with Bo Nix in Denver. And obviously with Charbonnet, you know, he's a guy that could be a starter when Kenneth Walker III is injured. And then when they're both playing together, it gives you that thunder and lightning combo. And there's been a lot of games where sometimes Kenneth Walker will score once, twice, 3 times, and Charbonnet doesn't get any. And then there's going to be games where they both score once or twice. And sometimes there will be games where Charbonnet scores twice and Walker doesn't score any. So again, they're going to definitely need that RB2 to step up from time to time, you know, based on the play calls. First and goal, man in motion. Play clock winding down. Uh-oh. Fuck. And you got a false start there, and Jalen Sundell, the center. Self-inflicted wounds. Yeah. But also, Judah, like I was talking to my best friend Justin, who's a Bronco fan, there's no guarantee the kicker would have made it. You know, based on the wind and the conditions, not just in the second half, but in the first half, even though it wasn't as snowy, there's no guarantee that he would have made that kick. We assume that he would have made it, but again, we did see kickers miss kicks right before halftime and throughout the game. So, I mean, if the score is going to be that low scoring, 10-7, the special teams or the defense for Denver needed to score for them to win, and they didn't get that special teams or defensive touchdown, and that's what happened. Darnold, back of the end zone, caught by JSN, but out of bounds, incomplete. Like, I was kind of thinking, for Stidham to be able to beat the Patriots, to me, he would have had to throw for 2 touchdowns, and throw for, maybe 200 plus yards. And he could throw maybe 1 pick at the most, but again, he did good in, that first quarter with that deep pass and then hit Sutton in the end zone, but he didn't really do a whole lot after that. And that's a credit to New England's amazing defense. Second and goal. After that last pass to JSN was a little high for him at the Ram 14 shotgun set. Darnold, back of the end zone. He's open. Touchdown. JSN, blown coverage by the Rams. And just like that, Seattle capitalizes. And that's what great teams do, right? Again, it's not often that you're going to have blown coverage for Kyron Williams to be able to get in wide open. How do you let JSN, the best receiver on the Seahawks and one of the best receivers in the game this year, how do you let him get behind the defense? Make it make sense. And again, obviously they're playing man, and he gets caught in no man's land there, Lake, trying to guard 2 individuals. And extra point is up and good by Myers. And again, that might have been the difference between Seattle winning this game and not. Just like I mentioned with the Brady to Scotty Miller play right before halftime against, the Packers in the NFC Championship game. If Brady doesn't hit Scotty Miller with that long touchdown pass, we probably don't win that game. Again, it's still possible we could have, but to have the momentum before half is huge. And again, Darnold doing the same type of thing with Brady and Scotty Miller. It may have not been a 50-yard bomb, but again, great job, after getting that false start play to be able to have that play call. And it shows you how good of a play caller Kubiak has been for Seattle, right? And we already know what Mike can do on the defense, right? But again, Sean McVay, great play call with Kyron, bringing 2 guys to the right and flooding Kyron to the left. Nobody was there to cover him. And then JSN getting behind the defense. Great job there by Kubiak, who will be a head coach for an NFL team next year. So unfortunately, Seattle won't have him after this year, but I imagine they'll be able to get someone on that level, especially if they end up winning it all. 7 catches, 115 yards, 1 touchdown, and JSN may not be done. Myers kicks 65 yards, and Ronnie Rivers with a 29-yard return, and it's going to be first down and 10 at the Rams 29. And we'll see if they just hand the ball off and then we go into the locker room. Yeah, but also you have to realize it's not just drafting JSN, it's getting rid of Lockett and DK, so there's more opportunities for him to shine. Offensive line improved with Zabel. You got better defense, right? And then you got Kubiak. You haven't had a play caller like that in a long, long time. So it's not just the simple fact that you got JSN. It was all of these other things, including JSN. Improving the offensive line to give Darnold more time, getting rid of Lockett and DK, so more opportunities. And again, look at Horton and how good he was before he got hurt. So again, if you end up kind of having to do addition by subtraction, where sometimes you got to get rid of some pieces that don't fit the scheme, even though they may be fan favorites like Lockett and DK were at one point when they were on Seattle. But again, if you bring in a coach and he's got a philosophy, you have to trust it. And sometimes it's not going to make every fan happy, but based on the moves that they made and where they're at right now, I don't think any Seattle fan is complaining that they don't have Lockett or DK on the team anymore. Obviously, JSN is doing more this year than arguably any year DK ever had for Seattle. And DK had a few pretty good years, but JSN feels like he's a top receiver in the league. I don't think we've ever felt that way about DK Metcalf. We know Lockett was a great receiver, possession receiver, but I'm not really sure if we ever thought that DK was, he's never been a top 5 receiver. He might have been a top 15 receiver, maybe at one point top 10, but never top 5. And, JSN has got so much ability, he's going to be up in the top 3. And at one point or another, we may recognize JSN as being the best wide receiver in the league. Now, obviously, we have a lot of talented wide receivers, and you have to have a good quarterback to get you the ball so you can be recognized as one of the best receivers. But JSN took a big leap. And again, if you end up coming from Ohio State and you play wide receiver or you play a certain position like pass rusher, more times than not, those guys are going to pan out. And it's just about getting a quarterback and a coordinator to fit the scheme. And Darnold and Kubiak have made JSN's life a dream come true. Timeout, Seattle. And it's 17-13 with 8 seconds to go. First down and 10 at the Rams, 41. But just imagine if Charbonnet and Horton were still around. How much better, that offense would be at this point. I mean, injuries happen to every team, but shows you really how special they are. Stafford, as the clock is winding down, and he decides to slide. Ball comes loose. And look at Emanwari making another play, even though this doesn't count for a touchdown. Again, I haven't seen a safety be this productive in a first half in a long, long time, where he literally made almost every tackle on every play, regardless if it was a passing play or a running play. That's very impressive. And again, when you can get a guy doing things like that, that's like the Ed Reed, the Troy Polamalu's, the John Lynch's. You just don't really see, sideline to sideline coverage like that. But again, Emanwari, what a stud. And now we're at halftime, 17-13 Seattle. And again, that late touchdown at the end of the first half might be the reason why they win this game. Again, you always want to finish strong, and sometimes gaining the momentum into halftime is more important than sometimes even having the lead after the third quarter. And obviously if Seattle can have that lead after the third, that's going to maximize their chances of winning this game, of course. But it's better to not only to start strong, and it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But I really like the way that Seattle finished that first half. That was fucking huge. Yeah, and also DK, he can't run routes. Again, that was a knock on him when he was in college. Big arms, big legs, but could only run like 3 routes. So again, and also kind of a diva, and likes to fight, likes to talk shit, likes to argue. And again, when you're being productive and you're getting touchdowns and receptions and you're helping your team win, then, people will, kind of, turn away, a blind eye, whatever, and they'll let it go. But again, when you're not being productive and you're not getting touchdowns and you're not getting first downs, and then you start causing problems by talking too much or getting penalties, then eventually you become a distraction, and then you end up being a cancer to the football team. And then sometimes you got to get rid of a guy. And it's not like DK really did anything, in Pittsburgh. So it's like, still a guy that could help a team win, but not a guy that I would want on my team. Just a little bit too much me, instead of a team. And again, wide receivers are divas, more times than not. It's very rare to find one that's not a diva, but on top of being a diva, you have to be able to get the job done. And if you're going to talk more, than actually, getting the production, eventually you're going to be a lost cause for whatever organization you're on. And I don't really see, DK ever really being a amazing, top 5 wide receiver. Really the only way for him to be able to improve his game is if he ends up finding an OC to help him run all the routes on a top tier level, and then going to a team that already has a top receiver for him to be able to feed off of in a good system. But who knows, where DK's career will go. But, it seems like he kind of hit his ceiling, and I don't know if he's ever going to get any better. If anything, he might just get worse from this point forward, unless he ends up going to a team like the Niners, or someone, or the Rams, where they can utilize him specifically and get the most out of him. But, if you end up going to kind of, random teams here and there like Pittsburgh after Tomlin ended up retiring, and then you brought in a horrible option. If I was a Steeler fan, I would be ashamed, thinking that, okay, we're going to go from Tomlin to that, and again, sometimes you just don't understand what, moves are being made. But, I know I wouldn't want to be a Steeler fan. Like, who in their goddamn right mind thought that Mike McCarthy would be a good choice in Pittsburgh after Tomlin? Man, that's like going backwards, in a huge way. There's no doubt about that. Halftime, 17-13 Seattle. What an entertaining game. More entertaining than the first one. And again, we're not done. Seattle pacing for 34, Los Angeles pacing for 26. And hopefully we'll be able to get a special teams or a defensive touchdown before this one is over as well. I love watching the Niners and the Hawks, but this Rams-Hawks rivalry seems like it's going to end up being even more fierce moving forward. NFC West, man, it's where it's at. I mean, the only, little brother is the Cardinals, and I don't really know when they're ever going to be good, but at least you got three really good teams for the foreseeable future. Yeah, well, DK's even bigger. DK's even bigger than like Megatron if you're like looking at body size and whatnot. But sometimes if you're too top heavy, again, Moss and Calvin were a little bit more wiry, better route runners, better hands, mentally strong, winners, and could get the job done, again, and no one could really guard those guys. Calvin Johnson, Megatron, or Randy Moss. Hell, those guys could be double or triple covered and still score and still get the football. For DK, not so much. But sometimes you got to let guys walk and to realize what you have. And again, if DK or Lockett were still on the team, that would have taken away opportunities to JSN. And obviously, it also shows you on top of that you can end up getting, a guy like Horton, where no one expects him to do anything, and then he turns into a fan favorite and actually ends up turning into a solid 2 behind JSN. And even though he's been hurt for quite some time, when he was healthy, he's a guy that could score once or twice in a game like JSN, and that was kind of shocking, on how athletic Horton was and the chemistry he had with Sam and the team. So, it shows if you draft well, you bring in the right free agents, you got the right head coach, the right coordinators, you improve the O-line and the defense, then you can end up turning into the Seattle Seahawks. And again, to have one of the bottom 3 offensive lines and now to be kind of in the middle of the pack, 14th, 15th, 16th, and on top of drafting Zabel, getting Kubiak to come in and then improving the defense with Leonard Williams and a few others like Emanwari in the draft, everything that you needed to be able to take a big leap with the team happened with Seattle. And it may have been a year early. Sometimes it ends up being a year or 2 early, where you're building the team and you think it's going to take a few more years to get his guys. But sometimes it happens in that first or second year with the new coach. And again, depending on who you draft, injuries, role players, and the flow on how they've been playing, you got to remember Seattle's 14-3, 6-2 at home. They only lost 3 games this year by a total of 9 points. That's wild, right? 4, 3, and 2, right? At the beginning of the year with the Niners, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the middle of the season, or week 5, kind of early in the season, and then week 11 against the Rams. So their only 3 losses were to the Niners before they knew who they were identity-wise, the Buccaneers barely, and then obviously the Rams. So 4, 3, and 2. I haven't seen too many teams that haven't been that good on defense and had problems on the O-line be able to fix all of those things in 1 year, and then to be able to have the defense that elite is very shocking. But also the offensive line improving so much is a big reason why Darnold and JSN and Walker and all the rest are talked about, on a weekly basis. Kudos to Mike and that organization. They've done a fantastic job, and we know how good the Rams are. They're not going to roll over. Hawks are up by 4. And again, getting that late touchdown right before halftime might be the reason why Seattle squeaks out this game. Halftime in the NFC Championship game, 17-13 Seattle. All right, let's go over some stats. So 8 for 15, 125 yards, and 1 touchdown for Stafford. Let's take a look at what Kyron has. All right, Kyron, 7 carries, 31 yards. And obviously had the receiving touchdown, but no touchdowns obviously on the ground. Puka Nacua, 4 receptions for 75 yards, 1 carry for 4 yards. And obviously if the Rams are going to win the game, they're going to need Puka to get in the end zone or to make it a little bit closer. And then Devontae Adams only with 1 reception for 23 yards. And then Kyron, obviously, with the 1 reception for 9 yards, getting into the end zone for the Rams. All right, 12 for 18, 209 yards, 1 TD and no picks. That's exactly what you want from Sam Darnold. No Zach Charbonnet with the ACL tear. 9 carries, 37 yards, and a tutty for Walker. And Walker is a guy that can score once, twice, or 3 times in a game. And then JSN, 7 receptions, 115 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 42, and he's got 9 targets. Unbelievable. Going to the top dog early and often. Two fumbles for Seattle, 2 fumbles for the Rams, but none have been lost. And no interceptions by either quarterback at this point. All right, second half is next. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bang, bang. 17-13 Hawks. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. (17-13) Hawks. All right, second half is going to be starting here momentarily. Hope everyone is having a fantastic weekend. Congratulations to the New England Patriots for winning on the road in a blizzard against the Denver Broncos with their backup quarterback, Jarrett Stidham, after Bo Nix ended up, unfortunately, breaking his ankle against the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. We obviously knew how tough that was going to be in that particular matchup, but they fought as hard as they possibly could, but just not enough. 10-7 final for New England. NFC Championship game, and it's a good one. 17-13 Seattle. And if you're just tuning into the broadcast, Kenneth Walker III with a 2-yard touchdown rush. Myers with the extra point. 7-0 Hawks. Harrison Mevis with a 44-yard field goal in the first quarter. 7-3 Seattle. Myers with another field goal, making it 10-3 Seattle. Field goal for Mevis again in the second quarter, making it 10-6. Kyron Williams with a touchdown from Stafford with less than 2 minutes to go, making it 13-10 Rams. And then when they needed a touchdown with the 2-minute warning, with about a minute to go, they were able to go 6 plays, 74 yards in 34 seconds with 55 seconds left. And JSN with a touchdown from Sam Darnold, making it 17-13 Seattle. And again, it definitely reminded me a little bit of Tom Brady and Scotty Miller going against the Packers in the NFC Championship game. With only a few seconds left, no one anticipated, that deep play. And again, not only the deep play, but for someone to come down with it like Miller did. And again, JSN doing exactly what Scotty Miller did, getting a touchdown right before the half. And sometimes that momentum ends up being exactly what you need to be able to win a big, big game, especially an NFC Championship game. Rashid Shaheed set back to receive. And Ethan Evans kick, 65 yards, and it goes to the landing zone, and that's going to be a touchback. Let's not forget about Rashid Shaheed. He ended up getting the one pass early. And they want to make sure that they can use him as a decoy, but you can also use him as a weapon on offense. Hand off to Kenneth Walker III with a 5-yard run. Landman and Spates there with the tackle for the Rams. 2nd down and 5 at the Seattle 25. And if Seattle fans are incredibly lucky, we may even see one of these before the game is over. A touchdown for Shaheed or a special teams touchdown for Shaheed. Second half just underway. 17-13 Seattle. 2nd down and 5. Darnold, short right to JSN. Caught. First down, Hawks. Beautiful throw. And again, if they're going to play zone coverage with 4 Rams, scouring an area, and JSN can get in the middle of them, even if there's 4 defenders, he's going to find a way. Great route runner, great hands. And if you're going to play a zone, you got to find that soft zone. And nice job by Darnold and JSN. They have great chemistry and rapport, and it shows. First down, Hawks. Move the chains. Lake with the coverage and the tackle. Green Bean in the building. What's good? Audible at the line. Darnold going short right. Incomplete. And he goes for a fake toss. And Jared Verse hunting him down. At that point, he just had to throw it away. Good pressure there by Jared Verse. Fantastic defender for the Los Angeles Rams. A sack machine. 2nd down and 10 at the Seattle 37. "21 dropbacks, 8 pressures and 1 sack, no interceptions." And again, if the offensive line gives Darnold enough time, he can make the right, read and, make the right play happen. 2nd down and 10, a little misdirection. And the Rams sniff it out. Flag on the play. Kenneth Walker III with a minimal gain. And let's see who the flag is on. That might be on Seattle for holding. It's going to be on Zabel, and that's going to be declined. Loss of 2. So after the penalty that just got declined from the Zabel hold, that's going to be 3rd down and 12. All right, big 3rd down and 12 here for the Hawks. Let's see if they can end up finding a way. Shows you how valuable Horton and Charbonnet would have been in this particular game at this junction. Shotgun set, 3rd and 12. Rams bring in the blitz. Uh-oh, it's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. And the Rams love to blitz on 3rd down. And again, when you end up having the talented players like they have, like Jared Verse, he's going to get you more times than not. Loss of 8 and a big sack lunch there for Jared Verse. 4th down and 20 at the Seattle 27, and that's going to be a punt for the Hawks. He lost it. Oh, Hawks recover. Hawks recover. Whoa. And again, special teams, there has been some issues, with the Rams secondary and special teams. And if you're going to muff a punt, you got to make sure you get on it. And that was huge. Xavier Smith with the muffed catch, recovered by Young. And again, Young making sure he's not too close. Smith was falling backwards, hits him in the shoulder, and Young pounces at the exact right time. And then again, it shows you how big that touchdown was right before the half. And then now, the Hawks weren't able to move the football, but they get lucky on the muff by Xavier Smith. And now they should be able to score a touchdown, you would assume, within a play or two. And if it goes 24-13, that might be all she wrote. We know the Rams will still be able to fight back, but again, if you can go up 24-13 and have that momentum, that's huge. Even getting a field goal here is great to go up 20-13, but getting a touchdown, that'll be huge, especially after that muff. And that's exactly what Seattle needs to try to get. You need to try to punch this in to make it 24-13. Let's see what they do here. 1st down and 10. Darnold. Oh, he's open. Bobo. Touchdown. Hawks. And on the first play, Jake Bobo. And he's a guy, like Horton, that, has a lot of skill, but doesn't get a chance to play. Jake Bobo gets a chance to get in there, and they make the Rams pay. Xavier Smith with the muff punt, the late touchdown right before the half. And it's not only how you finish a first half, it's how you start a second half. Beautiful. And again, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to try to test the secondary on the first play. And a lot of times after a turnover, you try to score immediately on a deep throw. And that route by Bobo was a 10 out of 10. Unbelievable for a guy that's like 5th on the depth chart. Nice job, Bobo. Hell, Bobo may need to get more looks than Cooper Kupp. That's wild. Extra point by Myers is good. 17-yard touchdown pass from Jake Bobo from Sam Darnold. Beautiful. And again, you can't make mistakes like that if you're the Rams. You're playing the best team in football. Seattle is the best team in the NFC, the best team in the NFL. I feel the Patriots are number 2. They're very well balanced, offense, defense, special teams, even though I think Seattle is slightly better. And then the Rams are 3rd based on, the 3 teams that we have left. New England already punched their ticket to the Super Bowl. But again, if you're the Rams, you can't make mistakes, like that with Xavier Smith. You can't give up touchdowns before the half after taking the lead. And we already know how hard it is against the 12s, and how passionate, the fan base is. Anyone that lives in Oregon and Washington, if you're a fan of sports in those 2 states in the Pacific Northwest, we may not be championship worthy every year, right? But again, every once in a while, Mariners this year, Seahawks this year, sometimes when we're championship good, we mean it. It might take a few years to get to that point. Other times it happens, maybe a little bit sooner than we expect, like with the Hawks this year. But again, once you get to that caliber of a team, they're as good as anybody. And again, great job there by Seattle. Darnold to Bobo. And again, the route by Bobo was great, but also on top of that, that could have been Cooper Kupp or one of those other guys. But again, I like the idea of putting your foot on the gas and, no prisoners. We're going to try to score on you immediately after the turnover. And if you notice, most teams that go for the jugular and they go for the end zone shot, they end up getting it. It feels like maybe 60% of the time, when they try to go for that first play after the turnover. And if you're able to be lucky enough to get into the end zone, momentum builds and builds and builds. And now the Hawks, instead of being up by 7, are now up by 11. And that is a huge blow to the Rams as well as their special teams. Huge. And again, that that could be the difference. Again, scoring the touchdown at the end of the first half and then getting the muff punt and then the first play getting a touchdown. I see no scenario where the Rams come back. Again, I still think that they will score more points before this game is up. But guess what? Seattle ain't done scoring either. So there's still a good chance before this game is over that Seattle could be in the 40 range. And again, it's possible that the Rams could be in the 20s, but I don't think that they're going to get to 30 before this game is up. And Seattle is still pacing, at this point, somewhere between 40 and 48 points. And we know the Rams defense isn't as good as Seattle's, but they do have the ability to make plays once in a while. But now, being up by 11, there's going to be more pressure for the Rams to throw. And that fits perfectly into Seattle's hands, knowing that you're more than likely going to abandon the run with Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. And then this game could end up getting a little ugly if they decide to go that. If you're the Rams, you got to continue to go with Corum and Kyren Williams. Hand the ball off, but also going into the screen game and making sure that Kyren is still being utilized properly. Otherwise, this one could get really ugly really quick. And they decide to put a different special teams player back after Xavier Smith pretty much maybe coughed the game up. Now Jordan Whittington with an opportunity off that 62-yard kick by Myers, which is returned 22 yards by Whittington. We're not going to see Xavier Smith take a kick probably for the rest of the game, and who knows, maybe ever. Again, you can't have self-inflicted wounds, and again, especially if you end up muffing a punt, that's almost as bad as a pick six or a fumble for a touchdown, especially when you end up dropping it where you are on the field. Handoff. Nope. Fake. Little bootleg by Stafford. Wide open. Oh, what a throw to Colby Parkinson. 40 yards. First down. Rams. That was a pretty throw by the MVP this year, Matthew Stafford, threading the needle to Colby Parkinson. And again, they have 4 or 5 tight ends that they rotate. And again, Parkinson and Higbee and many others. But to be able to place that ball over Love's head, crazy touch, just out of reach there for Seattle. And then you got Leonard Williams. And you got Leonard Williams and the Rams chopping it up, getting physical. Yeah, we still got a lot of time, but again, if Seattle keeps this type of pace, the Rams will still get field goals and touchdowns, but, it's not like it's over yet, but again, the pressure is definitely on the Rams. Handoff to Blake Corum up the middle for a 4-yard gain. And as long as Seattle doesn't have any self-inflicted wounds, as long as they don't have any bad interceptions by Darnold, bad fumbles by Walker, and special teams muffs like we saw there by Xavier Smith. Hopefully that doesn't happen to Rashid Shaheed. Second down and 6 at the Seattle 31. Stafford going deep to Davante Adams. Wow. Almost got into the end zone there. Davante slow to get up. But now first and goal at the Seattle too. And that's what happens when you go against the MVP. They may be down, they may be out, but they're not, completely done just yet. And again, when you got guys like Puka and Davante Adams, you're never going to be out of the game as long as the Rams offensive line gives them time. Job and Love trying to get to Davante, but ends up clearing them both. And this is normally when you give the ball to Kyren Williams, but let's see what they do here. 24-13 Hawks, but it looks like it's going to be 24-20 here in just a second. Stafford. Touchdown, Rams. Davante Adams with a beautiful route. And him chirping to the crowd there. And just like that, a quick score for the Rams after the muff punt by Xavier Smith. And again, Stafford and Davante make the Rams fans forget about the blunder. And look at the route by Davante Adams. He may be old, but he can still get it done. Nice touchdown there from Stafford to Adams. 24-19 Seahawks, and the extra point is incoming. Extra point is up and good. 24-20 Seattle. And again, this is why I figured that this game would be, potentially better than the Super Bowl. This NFC championship game, has the ability to be better than the Super Bowl. And, hopefully New England will be able to, score points and play some good defense. But, man, these two offenses, when they're rolling, they are a lot of fun to watch. 9:41 left in the third quarter. Sean McVay letting out a scream of joy. 24-20 Seattle. What a game. Nice job by Stafford to Devontae Adams. And now it'll be Sam Darnold, JSN, and Kenneth Walker, the third's turn to do some damage. I see you, McVay. I see you. Great play call. And we'll see what Mike McDonald has in store, as well as Kubiak. All right, we're at 36, 14 more to get to 50. Let's get there. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Every first down, every mistake, every penalty, everything will be magnified here in the second half. Could come down to whoever has the ball last. Could end up coming down to a field goal kicker for the win for Mevis or Myers. Definitely could happen. And we'll see if they end up making an effort to get Shaheed the ball, not just with special teams, but offense as well. Gained another sub since the last commercial break. 33 to go. Do 23,400. Let's get it, baby. 9:41 left in the third quarter. 24-20 Seattle. Ethan Evans with the 65-yard kick into the end zone. First down and 10 at the Seattle 35. And I'm really happy that we're getting this matchup at the end of the year. You know, obviously with the Patriots and the Denver Broncos with the snow in the second half, left for kind of an underwhelming finish, you know, with only a 10-7 score. But we're definitely going to make up for it in this NFC Championship game. You know, number one offense, Rams, number one defense, Seattle. You know, both teams can score on offense, defense, and special teams. Very well-rounded in the same division, the best division in football, the NFC West with the Niners. And obviously, you know, the Cardinals are a little brother in the division. But again, fantastic matchup. And it's just going to make the rivalry even better moving forward. Instead of it just being the Seahawks and Niners, now it's the Seahawks, Niners, and the Seahawks, Rams. And I love it. I mean, even the Rams and the Niners will get in on it as well. Handoff to George Halani. RB2 filling in for Charbonnet after the ACL tear. 3-yard run up the middle. Young and Lake with the tackle for the Rams. Second down and 7 at the Seattle 38. Hand off to Kenneth Walker III, bouncing it off to the right side. Loss of 2. Rams defense stepping up here in the second half. And that's going to be third down and 9 at the Seattle 36. And you know, the Rams, they've shown that they've been blitzing on third down pretty often, you know, towards the end of the first half and now in the second half. So if Seattle can recognize that they're going to be bringing the blitz and they're not going to just bring in, you know, 4 up front, you know, they got to be able to adjust accordingly. You know, you're not going to be able to get that deep pass to JSN typically if the blitz is coming. You know, you may have to go for, you know, a screen or something intermediate. But we will see if they decide to keep continuing to blitz or if they're going to only rush 4. Darnold Little soft zone, and there he is. Cooper Kupp, the former Ram, finally getting involved. First down, Seattle. Move the chains. And that's another thing. If you're going to end up being in a blitz, coverage, are you playing zone or are you playing man, for everyone behind the D line? And again, a lot of these, plays that we've been seeing, the Rams are playing zone. They're not playing man. So if you can get past Verse and Young, as well as the D line that's coming at Darnold, you have a good chance if you keep your eyes downfield that you'll find a pocket for one of your receivers and tight end, just like Cooper Kupp got in. Beautiful job by Darnold to Kupp. Hand off to Kenneth Walker III, running up the middle, breaking one tackle and another. And that's a beautiful 11-yard run there by Kenneth Walker III, bowling over a few Ram players on defense. First down, Hawks. Move the chains. Nice job by Cooper Kupp. I'm just excited that Jake Bobo got in the end zone. And if Horton wasn't injured, you would think that he would have a good chance in this game to get in the end zone as well. Shows you how deep, the team is. A guy like Jake Bobo, could end up being a wide receiver 3 on a few teams in the NFL. But obviously in the depth chart with so many guys, he kind of gets forgotten a little bit. But, great route runner, good hands, and he killed it in spring, obviously preseason. And Halani with a nice catch. 9-yard gain, Spates with the tackle. And sometimes when you end up having a great preseason, it will carry over into the regular season at some point. But I'm happy that Bobo ended up getting a chance to show, not only Seattle, but, the world that, hey, I can play. Second down and 1 at the Rams 32. After that 9-yard pass from Darnold to the backup RB2, George Halani filling in for Zach Charbonnet. Shotgun set, Darnold going to JSN. He's open. Little screen pass. Nice. Physical effort by JSN. Spates with the tackle. First down, Hawks. Move the chains. Nice job by Sam Darnold going to his favorite target, JSN. And sometimes it ends up being addition by subtraction. You get rid of DK, you get rid of Lockett, JSN becomes the guy. And did he ever this year? What a phenomenal season, and it feels like he's going to continue to be one of the top, 3 receivers in the league moving forward, and that's saying a lot, as long as he's got a capable quarterback throwing to him like Sam Darnold. Darnold, short left to A.J. Barner, the tight end. 7-yard gain off that play-action bootleg. That was a pretty play there by Darnold. And that's second down and 3 at the Rams 13. And obviously we know how elite the defenses are for New England and Denver. And then you also had the snow being a factor. Snow wasn't there. You assume that they would have gotten a little bit higher point-wise, maybe 17, 13 or something of that nature. It probably wouldn't have gotten into the 20s. And if it did, it would only be one team, maybe New England with 20 and then maybe Denver with 13 or 14. So screen pass incomplete. And I love it that they're going to Bobo. But again, you got to be able to give them a good look. Third down and 3 at the Rams 13. They're in field goal range, but they're not thinking field goal. 4 for 8 on third down. Average yards to go is 8.8, so this is nothing new. Third down and 3, shotgun set, Darnold. Nice throw! Touchdown, Seattle, Cooper Kupp. Whoa! Unbelievable throw, unbelievable catch, and he gets payback on his former team. Wow. Seattle's got 2 great white hypes. They got Jake Bobo and they got Cooper Kupp. And I love being able to see these Caucasian wide receivers. We used to see it with New England, with Edelman and Welker, Amendola. And again, primarily it's dominated by, the brothers being elite at that position. But you definitely have starting to see a shift in, college football and in the NFL, where you're starting to see more and more athletic Caucasian running backs and wide receivers. We obviously know they have a lot of tight ends and offensive linemen, but not a whole lot of running backs and wide receivers. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, we know of him on the Niners. But again, Bobo and Kupp, And Kupp obviously being the big name, for many, many years, now kind of being a role player, with Seattle. But a great Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, 13-yard touchdown pass connection. And just like that, 31-20 Seattle. Beautiful. And you kind of felt that Cooper Kupp was going to have a chance to score in this game. You just didn't know when, and they don't want to force it. They tried to force it to him in the first half to kind of get him going, but sometimes if you just let the game come to you, and especially if you've had other guys like Bobo that they have to worry about, then sometimes Kupp, might be the guy that's like maybe a little overlooked. They have so many options on where they're going to go. And again, a good connection, because we all obviously know, even though Cooper Kupp may not be as fast, or as talented as he was a few years ago, he can still get the job done if, you give him time. And again, it was a great route, great play call, and 31-20 Seahawks lead with 4:52. So it feels like, even though Seattle's defense is, top defense, Rams is the top offense, when they play each other, it's not going to be like New England and Denver, where it's going to be just, shut down, 3-and-out punt, interception, fumble. You're still going to be able to make big defensive plays from time to time, but the offenses, based on how each, offense is constructed and built based off the play calling, very impressive. And again, sometimes, you're going to watch a game that's defensive oriented. And again, 10-7 is a little too little of scoring for everyone. A lot of people got kind of uninterested in that particular game. But again, with Seattle and the Rams, you're never going to have that problem. 31-20, and we still got a quarter and a half to go. Seattle pacing for 50+, Rams pacing for 40. But again, there's only so much time left. And again, it feels like the Rams might be able to get to 30. Seattle might be able to get into the 40s. But again, I don't think that the Rams are going to hit 40, and I don't know if the Hawks are going to get to 50 unless they end up getting a pick six or a fumble for a touchdown or a Rashid Shaheed special teams touchdown. Then they might be able to get to 50, but, I'm not sure if you're going to get 3 more touchdowns by Seattle, but you never know. 4:52 left in the third quarter. 31-20 Hawks. Let's go. I see you, Sam. And, good for Sam Darnold and, all of the journeyman quarterbacks. It gives people like Baker Mayfield and others hope that, even if you get drafted by the wrong organization, if you can keep the faith and you find yourself on the right team, later in your career, you can have success. And we saw how good Sam Darnold was during the regular season, but the Vikings role players didn't put him in a good position to be able to succeed in the playoffs. Obviously, losing to Detroit and then, season being over. But with this Hawk team, definitely has a chance to, go not only go further, but to be able to kind of cement himself as one of the, best journeymen that we've seen in quite some time. And we've seen, success out of guys like Rich Gannon, Brad Johnson, may not be the most popular name, but again, more times than not, they would get the job done. Flag on the play. What a fun game. And I needed this, because we don't really know what the Super Bowl is going to look like. It could end up being 2017, kind of low scoring, or it could end up being something similar to this. But, we want to make sure that we have some excitement here at the end of the year. And we got an illegal block above the waist from the Rams on Jordan Whittington. Or is that Spates? Yeah, it's Spates. Whittington was the one that got the return from Myers, and then Spates with the penalty. First down and 10 at the Rams 13. Plunkett and Doug Williams. Those are other good, options there as well. Sometimes it's not going to be, the most popular or the top guy. Broken coverage. Davante Adams gets open. First down, Rams. 35-yard pass from Stafford to Adams as the Seattle DB fell down. And Witherspoon, when you're going to be physical with Davante Adams, you got to make sure you don't fall down. And again, Davante's got some great upper body strength. 35-yard gain there from Stafford to Adams. First down, Rams. Stafford going to the outside to Colby Parkinson. And we got another flag on the play. Illegal contact by Seattle. Tariq Woolen, or Reek Woolen, which he likes to be called now. First down and 10 at the Seattle 47. But again, when you're going against Puka, things are going to get handsy at some point or another between the DB and the wide receiver. Plunkett, Doug Williams, Rich Gannon, Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson, guys like that. Sometimes it's just finding the right coach and the right scheme to get the job done. And some guys end up winning a Super Bowl like Brad Johnson with the Bucks, and others, come close, but, end up not having maybe the greatest game like Rich Gannon with his 5 picks and 3 pick sixes. Thank you very much. Got a few Rams going to the locker room. Hopefully those guys are okay. Kyron Williams up the middle for a 5-yard gain. We got a special teams player and a defensive stud going to the locker room for the Rams. Another flag on the play. Stafford avoids the sack lunch. Ooh. And a nice tackle there. And I think this one might be on the Rams penalty-wise. Let's see. Well, it's been a flag party here, to say the least, in the last 3 minutes. Illegal use of hands by Los Angeles. Alaric Jackson, the offensive tackle. Another 10-yard penalty. Second down and 15 at the Rams 48. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Hand off to Kyron Williams up the middle. Gain of about 3. Murphy and Thomas in there for the tackle. Seattle. Third down and 12 at the Seattle 49. What a fun game. Very back and forth. Just when you feel like the Rams are going to catch up, then Seattle responds, and vice versa. It's nice to be able to see each team, and obviously both of these teams are 2 of the best teams all year. It's not a surprise that these are the last 2 teams that are left in the NFC, and like it wasn't really a surprise of the last 2 teams with New England and Denver. I mean, these are the 4 of the top teams, throughout the year. And again, you got to have that balance. It's just unfortunate with some of the injuries, and Seattle almost comes up with a big interception. Reek Woolen almost coming down with that. What happened to my hands? And a lot of times if you play DB instead of wide receivers because you can't catch. But Reek Woolen almost comes down with a big interception. But again, if you saw Puka, with great awareness, grabbing the wrist and trying to poke it away, if he didn't do that, that probably would have been a pick by Reek Woolen. So great awareness there by Puka. That turns into 4th down and 12 at the Seattle 49. And it just feels like Seattle's going to score a field goal or a touchdown on almost every single drive the rest of the way. Special. Unsportsmanlike conduct on Seattle. So Reek Woolen gets hit with the taunting, and now it's a first down for the Rams. Unbelievable. And again, you got to have the maturity, to know when to shut up. And if you're going to keep talking shit, especially lingering, towards the sideline, those are the type of things that are going to get the, another team back in the game, and again, emotions are high, but again, you got to be able to know when to shut up. And that's a killer right there for Seattle. And the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl with their win 10-7 earlier today. And whoever wins this game will be joining them. Big deep throw, touchdown, Puka Nacua. And again, after one bad penalty, what do? Just like after a turnover, right? Or a mistake from the other team, you try to capitalize immediately like they did with Jake Bobo, right? And then the Rams, right after the penalty from Reek Woolen, what do? They go after Reek Woolen. And Puka getting a beautiful touchdown from Matthew Stafford. And again, it just feels like it could come down to whoever has the ball last is going to win the game. The Rams are not giving up. And again, I hate to see Riq Woolen acting like DK Metcalf, but unfortunately, some guys are going to be a good fit for the team, and others you may have to move on. And that taunting play turns into a touchdown, potentially here for the Rams as they're looking at it for review. But again, I like the structure for each team, trying to go for the jugular after a mistake. Again, after the muff punt, by Xavier Smith, immediately going for the first play for the end zone. And after a taunting penalty by Riq Woolen, going immediately at him and going for a touchdown and getting it, potentially. And if they don't get it, he's going to be down very, very close. Looks like a touchdown to me, though. (31-20) Hawks. I mean, imagine if the game was closer than it is right now. Like if that would have given the Rams the lead, again, emotions, end up, getting the best of you. But again, it's not like this is the first time that Riq Woolen has done something like this, and again, sometimes, if you got that DK Metcalf in you where you just don't know when to be quiet and shut up, eventually, it's going to end up hurting the team. And again, I don't know what he thought by, chirping, at the bench, at Stafford, at McVay, and the rest of the sideline with the ref standing right there. Like, what did he think, that he was going to get away with that? And sometimes he might, but not there. 34-yard touchdown pass is confirmed. Extra point is up by Mevis, and it is good. 31-27 Hawks. Still up by 4, but again, not ideal. You had a much bigger lead, by 11, and they just have to be thankful, Hawk fans, that this didn't turn into a 31-27 lead for the Rams after that penalty, and again, there's going to be a lot of words discussed, with Riq after this game is over. Obviously, if they win, it's not going to be as much of a focal point, but if Seattle loses, we will go back to this moment, where he ended up chirping a little bit too much. Both teams have been able to execute after mistakes, penalties, or turnovers, and they're able to, get into the end zone. But now you're getting frustration. Emenwari, Riq Woolen, and a lot of the secondary chirping at each other, and again, Emenwari has been sideline to sideline doing his job. So for Riq Woolen to be arguing, it shows you some guys just lack maturity, and again, some guys come into the league and they end up, bringing a certain type of game to the NFL, and then sometimes they kind of get off course, and aren't really willing to work as hard as others, and then they end up making mistakes. And I feel that's kind of with Riq Woolen. When he first came into the league, there was a lot of promise, made some big plays, but every year after that rookie year, it seems like they might be able to do just fine without him. And we'll see if he ends up being on the team, down the road. But if you had to choose one guy, even prior to this incident, that you might need to get rid of, it's him. And again, he's had issues earlier in the year, and now it came back to bite him again. So, and it's crazy how you can end up getting a rookie that's more mature with Emanwari than Riq Woolen. But again, this isn't the first time that Riq has pulled a DK Metcalf and just doesn't know when to shut up. So Rashid Shaheed with the reverse, and there's just no area for him to go to there. Cameron Kinchins with the coverage. 2nd down and 10 at the Seattle 27. Kobe Turner back in the locker room, and hopefully he's okay. That's something that Seattle can exploit. Yeah, but again, even though Seattle's defense is number one and the Rams' offense is number one, again, there's going to be points that are scored. It's not going to be a, 17-13 or a 10-7 game like New England and Denver. These offenses are a little bit different than what you're getting with those offenses over there in the AFC. Now, every once in a while, Drake May and New England can put up numbers like this, like the Rams in Seattle, but not on a consistent basis. So, but I'll tell you what, both defenses, Denver and New England's, are special, just like Seattle's. Rams defense, obviously has some holes. They can play good at times, but again, that's kind of the streaky part of them, is the defense and the special teams. It's definitely not on point, like more times than not Seattle. They got offense, defense, special teams. Even with a few injuries, they're still very, very productive. Darnold incomplete short right, just having to throw it away, and now it's 3rd down and 10. Shotgun set, trips left. Kenneth Walker III towards the sideline. Nice catch, diving for the marker. And Cam Curl with the coverage. And again, look at the effort by RB1, Kenneth Walker III. There's not a lot of running backs that would have dove for the first down. I love the effort here by Walker. Great job diving for the marker. Less than a minute to go here in the 3rd quarter, and this one is living up to the billing. 31-27 Hawks. Could come down to whoever has the ball last. And again, we will see what Sam Darnold does here at the end of the 3rd quarter. Shotgun set. Darnold, short right. George Halani, RB2, filling in for Zach Charbonnet. 5-yard gain. Nate Landman there with the tackle. 2nd down and 5 at the Seattle 42, and that's going to be the end of the 3rd quarter. Hawks up by 4, and they have to be very thankful that they're not down by 4 after that blatant, immaturity there by Riq Woolen. But again, even with that being said, they're still up by 4, and again, it's up to Seattle to get the job done here in the 4th quarter. What a fantastic game. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bang, bang. Fourth quarter incoming, 31-27 Hawks. All right, here we go. Started the fourth quarter. It's going to be a classic. It already is. 31-27 Seattle for a berth to the Super Bowl versus the New England Patriots. Both times these teams fought New England in the Super Bowl, they both lost. And this year, they both have teams that are good enough to beat New England. But again, who wants it more, Seattle or Los Angeles? Nice run there by Sam Darnold. And again, at some point, you have to assume Darnold and Stafford may have to run for a first down or two here in the fourth quarter. Great job there by Darnold running towards that left end. Spates, and with the tackle or the coverage there late, but not after Darnold scrambles for 14 yards. First down, Hawks. And obviously he's not the fastest QB of them all, but speed can be deceptive, especially when you end up having to get those, big first downs, critical first downs late in the game. Trips right. Uh-oh, it's 12 noon. You know what time it is? Big sack lunch by Kinchins. Wow. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is? Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. God, he got shot out like a missile. Where was the coverage there from the O-line or the RB to be able to end up getting the chip right here? I mean, he comes out unblocked. Holy cow. Loss of 9. Big sack lunch there from Kinchins. And Seattle has to be lucky that Darnold didn't fumble that ball away. That could have been a game, a big game-making type of play that could have changed the momentum, no doubt. Loss of 9. Holy cow. Cameron Kinchins came out of nowhere. Shotgun set. Darnold short left to Cooper Kupp. And that's only a 4-yard gain. Rams playing the soft zone, not trying to have anything really get behind them besides that JSN touchdown earlier in the game. Third down and 15 at the Rams 49. "13 minutes and counting in the fourth quarter, 31-27 Seattle." Rams offside, Jared Verse. And flag comes out. Neutral zone infraction there on Jared Verse. Now everyone on the Rams is trying to get a big jump, like Kinchins did on the previous play. 5-yard penalty. Neutral zone infraction by Jared Verse, which is rare. Third down and 10 at the Rams 44. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Big third down here. Shotgun set. Darnold going short right to Rashid Shaheed in double coverage, incomplete. Kobe Durant pokes it away. And that's a big defensive stop there for the Rams. Fourth down and 10 at the Rams 44. And we assume that the Hawks will punt. Yeah, you're not going to see Xavier Smith back there for the rest of the game. There's no doubt about that. And now they're going to bring Kyron Williams in. And that's going to be fair caught by Kyron Williams at the 10. 34-yard punt there by Michael Dixon. And it's going to be first down and 10 at the Rams 10 here for Matthew Stafford. 12:18 left in the fourth quarter in a classic NFC championship game with a berth to the Super Bowl on the line versus the New England Patriots. 31-27 Hawks. Every penalty, every big play is going to be magnified tenfold here in the fourth quarter. $12:18 left in the fourth quarter. 31-27 Hawks. Let's go. $11 likes away from 50. Let's get there. If you haven't hit that like button yet, please do. It'll help us out with the metrics. Hand off to Blake Corum, bouncing off that left tackle for a 10-yard gain. Reek Woolen and Kobe Bryant there. First down and 10 at the Rams 20. Move the chains. First down, Rams. Only 11 more to go to get to 50. We can do that. I mean, if we can't get to 100, we got to try to get to at least the halfway point. $31-27 Hawks in a classic here in the NFC Championship game. Stafford, play action. Little check down to Blake Corum, the Michigan Wolverine alum, and he gains 15. Devin Witherspoon with the tackle for Seattle. First down, Rams. Move the chains. And especially if the Rams end up scoring a touchdown and go up 34-31, it could end up turning into, whoever has the ball last, or a potential game-winning field goal for Mevis or for Myers, or the Rams or the Hawks, unless Seattle can keep pushing out touchdowns here in the fourth quarter. And the Rams haven't really been able to stop them that frequently, but now it's getting much tighter after that Reek Woolen debacle. First down and 10. Little check down again. Both teams playing a pretty soft zone. And Kyron Williams breaking away, slithering his way for a few extra yards. And for a game that should have been probably only 7 or 8, turns into 13. Got to be better at tackling there. First down, Rams. Move the chains. Could have had a late hit there on Stafford as well. That wasn't called. Yeah, but again, they do have the number one offense. So, obviously number one defense typically ends up beating number one offense, but you are going against the, potential MVP of the league. Kyron Williams, when healthy, is normally a top 10 running back. you got Puka and you got Devontae, who most of the time are unstoppable. So, and even Blake Corum is decent. So, it really just depends on the O-line and the D-line, for the Rams and the Hawks. Again, if you're going to be able to make, the Rams' life tough, you have to get to Stafford. And Seattle hasn't been able to do that really that much this game. Stafford, play action, plenty of time back there. He's going long, he's going deep, he's got a man, but he overthrows him. Incomplete. Reek Woolen in coverage. And Kanata Mumfield, the deep threat, was the intended target. 2nd down and 10 at the Rams 49. Dylan in the building, what's good? And it's not going to be, like in the first game with the Patriots and the Broncos, even minus the snow. We know how good those defenses have been. And obviously you expected the offenses to be a little bit better for Drake May in New England, considering, they're not using a backup quarterback like the Broncos did with Jarrett Stidham. But, shows you how good Denver's defense really was that game. Big first down there from Stafford to Colby Parkinson. And again, if you're just going to sit back and play zone, Stafford's going to tear you up. You're going to have to try to blitz on 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down and get to the quarterback. Because if you give Stafford that much time, he's going to eat you up. And that's what he's been able to do here. Colby Parkinson with a great catch and great yak yards. Great stiff arm there late. And it's 1st down and 10 at the Seattle 35. There's only 9:40 and counting, so there's not going to be too many more touchdowns, Maybe one for each team, but, field goals could come to be a factor here late. 2-yard pass from Stafford to Corum. And again, it really just depends on each defense if they're going to play man or zone. Most of the plays that we've seen, it's been a zone for both. And again, they haven't really been able to get to the quarterbacks, a little bit. But again, late in this game in the 4th quarter, you have to try to be able to get to Stafford. Only 1 touchdown in the first half, 2 here in the second half. But again, Seattle not really having a whole lot of luck on that offensive line of the Rams. Little check down. Also, a few missed tackles by Seattle's secondary and linebacking core. That needs to be firmed up a little bit. 7-yard pass from Stafford to Blake Corum, the Michigan Wolverine alum. 3rd down and 1 at the Seattle 26. I mean, you're only going to get 1 or 2 possessions each, left in this game, especially with less than 9 minutes to go. So, and if they end up having some long drives, that's going to eat up a lot of clock. 3rd down and 1. Stafford, play action. That was the right play call, but great defense. And what happened to my hands? That could have ended up being a huge touchdown for the Rams there. Great play call on the play action, but they weren't able to execute it. Now, if they would have been able to throw it to another tight end, maybe they would have been able to come up with that grab. Wow. I mean, there's a hand by Nwosu that kind of got in frame, and that was just enough for him not to be able to fully focus on that football. Huge play by Nwosu, but now it's 4th and 1, and the Rams aren't thinking field goal, they're thinking touchdown. This would be huge here. 4th down and 1. Shotgun sets. Snap is low. Stafford. And breaks the tackle. 1st down, Rams. Wow. Holy cow. Sean McVay's in his bag. And again, that's why you can never count them out. 3-yard run there by Stafford. And again, we need the Seattle D-line to be able to get to Stafford and, make his life difficult. But they have the players out there to do it, but they just haven't been able to win the matchup against the Rams O-line here in the second half. 1st down and 10 here for the Rams at the Seattle 23. Stafford, hands off. And Blake Corum going in the wrong direction. But you got defensive offsides by Seattle, and that's not what you need. Tyrese Knight, the linebacker, offside. Now it's going to be 1st down and 5 at the Seattle 18. And again, you don't want to have any mental errors here late, especially being the number one team in football in the Seattle Seahawks. And they were the number one team going into the playoffs. They're the number one team right now. And again, the Rams are pushing them to their limits. Offensive line for the Rams has done a very good job against the Seattle D-line here in the third and fourth quarter. Seattle's defense definitely, could use a fumble or an interception. I mean, they don't even necessarily need a pick six or a fumble for a touchdown. That would just be icing on the cake. But just to be able to get a turnover, off a muff snap or something of that nature would be huge at this point. Play action, Stafford, pump fake, and a little flip here late to Puka. Wow. And another first down. First down, Rams. 6-yard pass with Stafford to Puka there late with the late flip. Witherspoon with the coverage, and the clock is winding down. First down and 10 at the Seattle 12, and it feels like we're just moments away of it being 34-31. And then Seattle desperately needs to be able to match with the field goal at the very least. But, if they want to be able to win this game, they have to be thinking 6 and getting a touchdown after the Rams potentially will score a touchdown here in a second or two. Shotgun set. Short middle to Puka Nacua, caught, and that is a tackle by Jones and Knight for the Hawks. Second down and 4 at the Seattle 6. Don't know if you're going to be able to get the turnover here, though. They keep marching it pretty easily. And it's like you got, players on the D-line that can make these big plays, but they just haven't been able to break through. And the linebackers in the secondary have been getting exposed a little bit here. Kyren Williams up the middle. There we go. Tyrese Knight with the tackle after coming up with the offsides earlier. No gain by Kyren. Huge play for Seattle. And now it's third down and 4 at the Seattle 6. And again, with it being with less than 6 minutes to go, if it ends up being, fourth down and 1, it wouldn't be shocking for McVay to go for it. They're looking for a touchdown on this drive. If they kick a field goal, they're still down by 1. And then if Seattle scores a touchdown, they're down by 8. So at this point, they're all in. So don't be surprised if the Rams continue to go for it until they get into the end zone or if something else happens. Shotgun set, Stafford, short right to Kanata Mumfield, incomplete. And now it's fourth down and 4 at the Seattle 6. Now, would the smart thing to do would be to kick the field goal, so that way at least you get some kind of points, but I just don't see any scenario of them bringing out Mevis and then being down by 1. Crazy how momentum shifted so quickly in the second half. But again, when you do have the potential MVP at quarterback going against you, it's going to, be a tough matchup. Shotgun set, Stafford going to Ferguson and complete. So the Rams take a chance and go for it. And I don't know if I would have called that particular play. The play was intended for Kyren Williams, but they double teamed him. Great defense by Seattle. And that is incomplete. Great job there by Witherspoon. And again, now Seattle has the ball, first down and 10 at the Seattle 6. So if Seattle can march down the field and get a field goal, they'll be up by 7. That could be enough to win. And then if they obviously get the touchdown, the game is over. So, again, sometimes when you're overly aggressive, you end up, doing the wrong thing. And again, is it very possible that they could have scored a touchdown there? Like if Kyren was, one-on-one, it probably would have been a touchdown, but Seattle was smart. They know that on those kind of plays, that's who they look for first, Kyren Williams. And they had him double teamed, and then they had to go to the second option, which was Ferguson. And, Witherspoon was blanketed all over him. Great job by Seattle. The number one defense prevails, and now we just need to be able to see a long drive all the way down the field, and hopefully Seattle will be able to get it, and they'll be able to win this game. But again, you have to be very careful with your play calling, because when you're backed up in your own end zone, there is a possibility for a pick six or a fumble for a touchdown or kind of a fuck up. So again, they just have to be very efficient here, with their play calling, and hopefully they can get out of the back of their own end zone within the first or second play to give them a little bit of breathing room. So hopefully on the first or second play, they can get 10 or 15 yards. So that way they can be at the 15 or the 20, and then they can kind of get back to their regular play calling. 4:54 left here in the fourth quarter in a classic NFC Championship game. 12-5 Rams, 14-3 Hawks. And remember, the 3 losses for the Hawks were a combined 9 points. 4, 3, and 2, right? Against the Niners week 1, week 5 against the Buccaneers by 3, and then week 11 by the Rams by 2. So by far, this is the best team in football. New England is very well-rounded, and they're kind of the AFC version of Seattle. So if it ends up being the Hawks and the Patriots in the Super Bowl, it'll be a classic. And again, the Rams and the Patriots have met up in the Super Bowl as well. Rams and Seahawks both, last time that they made it against the Patriots, both have lost. But this year it kind of feels like it could be different. They could definitely get payback this year, either team, Los Angeles or Seattle. But a big stop there by Witherspoon, 31-27 Hawks. And now they just need to do what they normally have done throughout the year. Take care of the football, efficient play calling, and win the battle up front with your O-line versus their D-line. And they're going to be aggressive. They may blitz on first or second down. For sure, they're going to be bringing the blitz on third down. So as long as you know what's coming, hopefully they'll be able to prepare appropriately. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Handoff to Kenneth Walker III up the middle for a 4-yard gain. 2nd down and 6 at the Seattle 10. Sam Darnold, so efficient, 22 for 32, 310 yards, 3 TDs. And we remember, Darnold going from USC to the Jets when he was seeing ghosts. This Sam Darnold would be, very, very proud of where he was in college to where he went for adversity with the Jets. And then to make himself, such a good role player. And not only that, a good player, not only with the Vikings last year, but with Seattle this year. Very impressed. Darnold. Little check down. Kenneth Walker III missing 1 tackler, a 2nd tackler. There we go. That's exactly what we needed. 1st down, Hawks. And just to give you a little bit of breathing room, like I mentioned a minute ago, 15-yard pass from Darnold to Walker. Look at those jukes and those extra yak yards. 3-yard catch, 12 yards after the catch. 1st down and 10 at the Seattle 25. Let's go, Hawks. That's a huge play right there to get them out of their own end zone. Great job by Kenneth Walker III. Beautiful. Man in motion. Handoff to Walker up the middle again. And gets clipped up by Spates. 3-yard run. 2nd down and 7 at the Seattle 28. Timeout, Los Angeles. That is their first timeout here in the second half. Chief in the building. What's good? Drew in the building. What's good? Shotgun set for Darnold. Goes for the fake play action and just throw towards the sideline, incomplete. Rashid Shaheed, the intended wide receiver there. No flags come out. 3rd down and 8 at the Seattle 27. I'm not sure if I really like that particular play call. But Darnold has done a fantastic job. 300 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. You couldn't have asked for a better game. Little PI by the Rams with the shove before the ball came. There's a few plays that the refs are letting them play. That's for damn sure. 3rd down and 8, and this is going to be a timeout, Seahawks. Yeah, first game didn't really live up to the billing. I mean, we knew that there was a good chance that if it was going to be in Denver or New England, that there was going to be a blizzard. But first half, weather was decent, but then the second half, it got really bad. And even when the weather was good, either team really couldn't move the football. You don't expect Stidham to move the football since he hasn't started in 2 years, but it was a little shocking to see Drake May not really play very well. He's supposed to be the, MVP runner-up to Stafford. And I get it, you're on the road, but you have a much better offense than Denver. But it really showed how good New England and Denver's defenses really were in that entire game. And that was definitely the strong suit. But, again, if New England plays like that, they're not going to be able to beat either team, Seattle or Los Angeles, in the Super Bowl. They have to play much better, And again, the weather, in the second half was a big factor of neither team being able to get to 20, let alone it was a 10-7 final. But, I was a little alarmed, on how inefficient and how weak, New England looked at times, and again, Denver's defense is elite, with Nick Bonito, and we obviously know how New England's defense has been top 10 as well. It may not have been as talked about as much as Houston's defensive line, Seattle's defense overall, and Denver's defense, but New England, if you look at a lot of their rankings, a lot of their offense, defense, and special team rankings, a lot of them are top 10. So again, they may not have been talked about as much as Drake May, but again, defense does win games, defense wins championships, and honestly, if Bo Nix was healthy, who knows if New England would have won that game. It definitely could have, been Denver, but we'll have to wait until possibly next year or the year after to see if we get a rematch between Denver and New England, and hopefully it'll be Drake May healthy, Bo Nix healthy, and we'll let them go at it. 3:20 left in the fourth quarter, 31-27, Seattle. Chief with the fiver, appreciate you. Stacks, Racks with the little Cactus Jack, bang, bang. I mean, I think based on looking at the teams and the way that they're built, Seattle feels like they have the best team. New England looks like they're team number 2. They're like a mirrored Seahawk team. They're just the AFC version. Offense, defense, special teams, very well-rounded. And then you got the Rams, who got the MVP at quarterback. You got really good wide receivers, good running backs, really good tight ends. But really the concern for the Rams is their special teams and their defense, primarily their linebackers, their secondary, and special teams, which we have seen Xavier Smith fumble the bag, and the Seahawks ended up scoring off of that, and that could end up being the difference in this game. So it's not like the Rams have a full, complete team. Sometimes their defense shows up, sometimes it doesn't, but again, if you're looking at kind of pecking order, that's kind of how it looks like to me at the moment, but again, the Rams are still in the mix, obviously only down by 4 with 3:20 to go. They still would have been down by 1 though, so that was kind of the thinking, because if they get down 31-30, Seahawks score a touchdown, then you're probably going to lose because you're not going to get the 2-point conversion. Cooper Kupp, ball comes loose, but not after the elbow hit. And Cooper Kupp going against his former team. Let's see where they spot this football. Seven-yard pass from Darnold to Kupp. And that's going to be timeout Los Angeles. Timeout number 2 by LA here in the second half. 1 remaining. Wow, what a dime by Darnold to Kupp. And again, if you've watched Sam Darnold at USC, when he was on the Jets, and to see where he was and where he is now, from how good he was last year with Minnesota, and then how good he's been this year, again, a perfect journeyman story, kind of like Baker Mayfield, except we haven't really been able to have the same type of role players around Baker to make it work. Obviously, we had a lot of injuries, and we need better coaching. We need better defense. But again, to be able to see this version of Sam Darnold on where he was at USC, very highly touted, and then to be able to not make it work in a bad organization like the Jets, and then to see him, ball out for Minnesota, and then even ball out more this year with Seattle, it really does show you how important the O-line and the defense are on top of the coaching and the play calling. If you didn't have Kubiak there, you wouldn't be in this position. So you also have to realize how much of a difference a good defensive coordinator, a good head coach, a good offensive coordinator will be. And Kubiak is gone after this year. So Seattle has to hope that they win the Super Bowl this year while they have Kubiak, because once he leaves, again, we still assume the Seattle offense will be great, but it may not be as good as this year's with Kubiak. Handoff to Kenneth Walker III. No gain. Jared Verse there first with the tackle. And that's going to be the third and final timeout by the Rams. .305 left in the fourth quarter, 31-27 Seattle. All right, let's see what Sam Darnold has in store here. And we'll see if Jared Verse and company can make a play. What a fantastic game. And a lot of times, the NFC championship game or AFC championship game sometimes ends up being even better than the Super Bowl. Man in motion, Darnold. JSN is open. Throw it to him. There he is. Huge play. First down, Hawks. Move the chains. And again, it shows you when you end up having one of the best players in the NFL, you got to make sure you get the football in his hands. Great job there by JSN. First down, Hawks. The speed, the route running, the hands, he's got it all. And again, to be able to have a guy like Darnold be so in tune with JSN, who would have thought that these two would be one of the best combos in the NFL this year? It is wild. 12 targets, 10 catches, 155 yards, 1 touchdown. And again, this wouldn't have been possible if DK and Lockett were still on the team. And imagine if Horton and Charbonnet were available and they weren't hurt, how much better this offense would look. Very impressed. First down and 10 at the Seattle 49. Rams have no timeouts left. And again, 2:28 left here in the fourth quarter. And we will see what happens here with Seattle. Yeah. Also, the Rams lost in the, as well. So, both teams are looking for payback against New England. Both teams have lost in the Super Bowl versus New England and Tom Brady. So, whoever ends up winning this game is trying to get payback from, even though it's a different era, different coaches, at that time. But, everyone's trying to be able to, get a little payback, even if it ends up being different teams, at this time. 3 minutes left here in the fourth quarter. 31-27 Seattle. What a fantastic game. A lot of peaks and valleys, ups and downs. A little bit too much extracurriculars for a few like Reek Woolen, but we'll see what Seattle does here late in the game. Hand off to Kenneth Walker III. And gains about 3. Second down and 7 at the Rams 48. And I think people have been sleeping on New England all year, again, with Drake May and Diggs and Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson and, looking at Mac Hollins and, all the different options that they have. Booty, they're a little bit better than people want to give them credit for. A lot of people didn't even think that they were going to be able to beat Houston. And I thought that was a little disrespectful, on how good they've been, offense, defense, and special teams. And, Drake May has been the name that's been linked to the MVP other than Stafford, but it still feels like people don't want to give New England credit. But, even though it was kind of ugly today with the weather, it was enough for them to beat Denver with a backup quarterback. Now, if they would have had Bo Nix, maybe they don't win, but, we'll have to wait in the future for that rematch. Flag comes out, and we'll see what we get here. I believe this will be on Los Angeles. Kobe Durant, defensive holding, automatic first down, Seattle. And again, based on the hype that we've had in the Pacific Northwest, we were really looking for a Mariner, World Series. And we ended up, falling short ALCS Game 7 against the Blue Jays. And then the Blue Jays went to the World Series and took the Dodgers to Game 7, went extra innings, and they lost. But again, if we're a good team in Oregon or Washington, it may take a few years to get to that point. But once we get there, not for, don't even, for a second think about it, other than they are contenders. They're not pretenders, and they legitimately do have a shot. So the way that, the Pacific Northwest is, progressing slowly but surely, Seattle might end up being a champion for the Seahawks this year, and who knows, maybe the Mariners next year. Hand off to Kenneth Walker III, bouncing it to the outside. And still on his feet, gaining about 6 yards there. 2nd down and 4 at the Rams 37, and we are at the 2-minute warning with no timeouts left for the Rams. Yeah, I think not only is Vrabel one of the best coaches, but he has to be very blessed that Josh McDaniels is still there mentoring Drake May. Because if they didn't have a great OC like Josh McDaniels, we're not talking about the Patriots in the Super Bowl this year. They would have been a playoff team, but not this good. So again, sometimes you need two guys. We know Vrabel's the head coach. He can call the defense. You got McDaniels, who's a top 5 OC. And again, he's been able to get Drake May, to the point where we thought he could be when he was in college at North Carolina. And so it really does show you, if you get the right coordinator and the right head coach, certain guys that we've been doubting in this league, have been able to show up. Like, for the longest time, we thought Trevor Lawrence was a bust. Right? We never thought he could be, a top 10 or top 12 quarterback. He's been stuck as a top 16 quarterback, even though he's been a number 1 pick. But then you end up bringing in Liam Cohen, the OC for the Buccaneers, and look what happened. Everything came together, and again, now Trevor Lawrence doesn't look like a bust. He looks like he could potentially be a top 10 quarterback, maybe even next year. That's saying something. And, look at Bryce Young, with Canales. They've been going through different coordinators and coaches often. And even though Bryce Young still, isn't at the point where he needs to be, even though they made the playoffs over the Buccaneers this year, bringing in Rico Dowdle, bringing in Ted McMillan from the draft, they just need to keep building. And again, sometimes it's easy to think, the quarterback failed the team. But let's be real. More times than not, the organization fails the quarterback before the quarterback fails the organization. You have to have a good owner, a good GM, a good coach, a good coordinator, good supporting cast. And a lot of these teams, they don't have all of those things in line. And then they end up firing a guy too soon. And then you got to start over and learn a whole new system. So again, it's nice to be able to see some of these quarterbacks that were doubted to be potential busts, like Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, and even guys like maybe Sam Darnold before he came to the Vikings. But it's nice to be able to see when things work out. Same thing with like Baker Mayfield, starting off with the Cleveland Browns, terrible organization to be drafted by, right? But then going to the Panthers and playing a little bit there, getting a chance to play with the Rams and winning a game, which ended up getting him a contract and a chance with the Buccaneers. And now the Bucs end up having their quarterback, potentially for the foreseeable future. So sometimes it's not the first team that you go to. Sometimes it's not even the second or third team that you go to before you actually find your fit. And again, both of these teams have, found their fit. But Sam Darnold, man, he has been super impressive here today. Outplaying the potential MVP of the league in Matthew Stafford is incredible. But they're very close in stats now. Stafford is 20 for 32, 3 touchdowns, so he caught up. And Darnold is 25 for 36 with 3 touchdowns. When's the last time we've seen an NFC championship game with both quarterbacks with 3 tutties and no picks? I can't remember. Walker up the middle, loss of 3. Spates and Reeder with the tackle. That was not the greatest play call there, but again, they used that play call to bleed the clock. Rams are out of timeouts, so that's kind of the reasoning. They're not doing it to try to actually get the first down there. They're doing it to bleed the clock. Because obviously if they would have went for a passing play and it would have been incomplete, then you're looking at closer to 2 minutes rather than closer to 1 minute. Timeout number 2 by the Hawks, and this is going to be a big play here. 3rd down and 7, you get the first down, game over. You win the game. So obviously the question is, who do you go to? Do you go to JSN, right, when he might be double covered? Do you go to Cooper Kupp? or do you go to the sleeper option like Jake Bobo? We know Bobo is a guy that can catch. He's got good route running skills, and he even has a touchdown. Or you can even go with a guy like Rashid Shaheed. So sometimes it may not necessarily be the 1 or the 2. It might be the 3rd or the 4th option that they might be able to get one-on-one. And honestly, out of any of those options for the Hawks, it's probably an advantage over the Rams, linebackers or secondary. So this will be very key. And also on the flip side, do the Rams bring blitz here on 3rd down and 7? They have been, bringing a blitz pretty frequently on 3rd down. And we will see if they do bring the blitz. They're not going to be in man. They're going to be in zone. So there'll still be a chance for Darnold to make a 1st down here and win the game. Let's see. Man in motion by JSN. And here comes the blitz. And it's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Loss of 5. Fisk coming in there with his 2nd sack lunch of the day. And where was Kenneth Walker III to pick up the chip right there? Jesus Christ. 4th down and 12 at the Rams 45. But on the bright side for Seattle, the Rams need a touchdown to win. You're up by 4, and you're only going to have about 25 seconds to go. But also, we've seen Stafford, pull up a miracle, with about a minute to go. Now you have half of that, But again, if they get a PI call or they target Reek Woolen, this could be disaster for Seattle. Realistically, this is a 90% chance that the Seahawks are going to win this game. Maybe 95. But there's always that chance, for a deep ball to Devontae Adams, a deep ball to Puka Nacua, or a PI call that could really change the outcome here. And hopefully Seattle's defense will come up big. And again, we were hoping that it would come down to whoever has the ball last, and that is what we're going to get. We got a 10-7 final for the Patriots over a backup quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. And again, they're going to be playing zone, not man. So remember that. They just can't let the receiver get behind them. Shotgun set, Stafford going deep to Puka. It's caught. 23-yard pass. 1st down, Rams. And then Stafford with the spike. And again, they're running out of time here. Now, if they were able to do like a hook and ladder, that could be the thing that could get them in the end zone. But again, you're running out of time here. But it would have to be the hook and ladder of the century. Like Devontae catches it, flips it to Puka, and then he runs down the sideline for the score or close to the score. But again, you only got 10 seconds left. Do you bring the blitz if you're Seattle, or do you just make sure no one gets behind you? Let's go Hawks. And Seattle's going to use their last timeout of the game. Timeout number 3. Gosh, man, what a game. And again, number 1 offense, Los Angeles Rams. Number 1 defense, Seattle Seahawks. And that's saying something, Their 3 combined losses were a total of 9 points. So there is, no question the Hawks are the best team in football. But, the Rams at any given moment can score. And New England is very well balanced like Seattle. Offense, defense, special teams doesn't really have a weakness. And Vrabel and McDaniels have done a great job. But you have to assume the winner of this game will be the favorite in the Super Bowl. All right, 21 for 34, 353 yards, 3 touchdowns. As long as Seattle plays defense, they're going to win this game. Stafford going deep to Puka, and that's caught. 21-yard pass. And Witherspoon with the coverage there. Wow. And it looks like he doesn't get out of bounds, and that is the final. Seahawks win. Seahawks win. Seahawks win. Wow. And again, give the Rams a lot of credit, for the ability to be able to fight back and whatnot. And again, Reek Woolen almost lost it for him, early in the game. And again, what a hell of a throw and a hell of a catch. And Puka was down inbounds. And the game is over. Wow. And again, that's how you want to be able to finish off a game, right? Have an NFC championship game that could be better than the Super Bowl. And again, the Mariners were so close. The Seahawks are a little bit closer, and vibes are high here in the Pacific Northwest. Believe you me. Final score, Hawks 31, Rams 27. And again, Seattle has to be the favorite over New England. They have a chance to be able to get payback, but this is exactly what we want. Two teams that mirror each other, that are almost identical. You know, the New England Patriots are the Seahawks of the AFC. They don't really have any weaknesses. They're good on offense, defense, and special teams. This Super Bowl is going to be very, very exciting. New England definitely has a chance to win, but definitely the favored team should be Seattle for good reason. 25 for 36, 346 yards, season high, 3 touchdowns, and the best part about it, right? No interceptions for Sam Darnold. This is not the Sam Darnold that was on the Jets. This isn't even the same Sam Darnold was on the Vikings last year. He's definitely taken his game to a whole nother level, and Kubiak is a big reason for that. But congratulations to all the Hawk fans who are also a lot of Husky fan and Mariner fans. This one's going to feel very, very good. A little scary there in the second half. But again, great job by Seattle on getting the dub. And now it's going to be the Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots in 2 weeks for the Super Bowl. So now as we have a little bit more time, we'll have to try to tap into, some NBA, some NHL. We will be going into NASCAR in February. But again, we have to be able to figure out other things to do. So tomorrow we will probably do Mariner Mondays for the first Monday. And obviously we can kind of review what happened in the AFC NFC championship game if we need to. But again, we're going to get closer and closer to the World Baseball Classic, spring training, and baseball season. So it'll give us a chance to be able to talk some baseball, talk Mariners, and talk just World Baseball Classic or anything in between. And then, again, I think hopefully if we get good results, we'll be able to do that a few times a week. And again, I think we'll end up doing that tomorrow. So that'll be probably between 5 to 7 o'clock or 6 to 8 o'clock tomorrow. I haven't really decided when we're going to start. But again, if the viewership for doing NBA or NHL are going to be light, then we might as well do something where we can get people to show up and talk baseball. We can talk, as far as the 2026 outlook of the season, the Mariners, obviously our favorite moments from last season, available players that are still available to pick up, as well as guys in the farm and power rankings and anything in between. So I think that's what we're going to try to do tomorrow. We'll see if we can get a good turnout, and then we'll continuously try to, do a little bit of NBA, NHL, WWE, NASCAR, Cup Series, Xfinity, and trucks. And then if we can do a little bit of just freestyling with a baseball stream, talking Mariners, hopefully that'll give us enough to get us to the point where we're into baseball season, which we still need another, month and a half before we get there. So again, we still need, viewership. We still need support before we get to baseball season, so I can continue to do this for you guys. And hopefully we'll be able to get some good results. So love you guys, and I appreciate you guys very much. Final score, Seahawks 31, Rams 27. And I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys very, very much. And I got one question for you. Who talks sports like us? Your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, and I'm out. Okay.